Chapter 2263. Han Fei had been struck in the Sea of Stars for more than half an hour. His body was almost dried up, and his vitality was insufficient. The only thing that made Han Fei feel fortunate was the sharp increase in the number of golden jade essence. If he had only produced 8 drops of golden jade essence in his previous 300 years of cultivation, then as his strength rose, the number of fortuitous encounters increased, the consumption of the saint bone, the replenishment of the moonlight essence, and even the supply of the Heaven's Path crystal and Heaven's Path jade essence. Under the baptism of lightning, he produced more than 100 drops of golden jade essence. Although this didn't seem to be a lot, with the golden jade essence he had accumulated before, the number reached 160 drops. Although Han Fei didn't know how many drops these 160 drops were, the number was 20 times that when the golden jade essence was just produced. Besides, this lightning baptism didn't just let Han Fei produce more golden jade essences. He wanted to use the lightning baptism to polish his body and soul and repair his foundation. If he cultivated step by step, Han Fei knew that he might have to stay in the wilderness for 40 or 50 years to completely solidify his foundation. However, it was different with the lightning baptism. Lightning execution could eliminate evil, temper the body, and cleanse the soul. If it weren't for the fact that he had no other choice, Han Fei would never choose to cultivate the 9th level of void fishing at this time. In fact, Han Fei really couldn't bear it anymore at this moment. Although half an hour had passed and the intensity of the lightning had almost been halved. However, the resources he had on him were almost depleted. The liquid divine light had long been used up, and now he needed to occasionally use the apocalyptic divine technique to keep himself alive. However, because he was within the range of the lightning baptism, it was difficult for the apocalyptic divine technique to coexist with the lightning, so when the lightning fell, the apocalyptic divine technique would be annihilated. When the lightning disappeared, Han Fei used the apocalyptic divine technique. If he had to use the two at the same time, the effect would be reduced. Gotcha. Crack. When Han Fei had no powerful resources and effective supplements, his body began to crack, and dense cracks spread all over his body. Occasionally, a certain part of his body would explode and golden blood would splash. Occasionally, a certain part of Han Fei's jade bone would make a sizzling sound when it was struck. Han Fei was afraid to hear the sound of the jade bone cracking. Once the jade bone cracked, it meant that the power of the lightning baptism was still beyond his endurance limit. After all, ordinary body refinement school cultivators might be able to reconstruct their bodies frequently, but that was because it was very easy for them to do so. But at Han Fei's level, the cost of rebuilding his body was very high. What he wanted to rebuild was the collapse of his body that had been tempered countless times. If the fragments of his physical body were still there, it wouldn't be a problem. However, if the fragments of his physical body were also destroyed or separated and sealed, then the consequences would be unimaginable. Boom! When the power of lightning broke through his body and flowed on his jade bones, Han Fei's bones were trembling as if they could crack at any time. Just as Han Fei was feeling extremely nervous, he felt his body suddenly shake. At first, Han Fei was a little surprised, wondering if the jade bone had cracked somewhere. However, he suddenly felt that something was amiss, because he felt that he had suddenly comprehended many heavenly Tao laws in his mind. It was as if there was a lot of heaven and earth Tao aura drilling into his body. Huh! Han Fei's eyes lit up. This feeling was the best time to merge with the heavenly Tao. If the heaven and earth Tao aura could merge with his own Tao, he could use more of the power of the heavenly Tao for his own use. In this way, there was nothing to be afraid of about the lightning baptism. Suddenly, the heaven and earth Tao aura burst out of Han Fei's body. The road of invincibility, the time Tao, the space Tao, the Tianqi Tao, the gravity Tao, the yin-yang Tao. When the various Taos merged with the heaven and earth Tao aura, Han Fei felt the heaven and earth Tao aura protecting his body. Boom! At this moment, Han Fei's body was like a swamp. When the lightning fell, he felt as if he had fallen into a swamp. Then, the lightning was twisted by Han Fei's Tao, and the purifying power dispersed around his body. The eyes of the onlookers lit up when they saw this. The Tao of balance has reached this stage? The Emperor's sparrow was a little surprised. Han Fei hadn't shown his talent in the Tao of balance before. However, this round of lightning baptism had triggered such a huge amount of heaven and earth Tao aura. This was the symbol of the Tao of balance, and borrowing the power of heaven and earth. This meant that Han Fei's divine soul and body had begun to reach a balance, and he had reached the point where he could borrow the power of the heavenly Tao to strengthen himself. Another half an hour later, the power of the lightning baptism was basically over. From a few strikes per second to a few seconds per second, Han Fei didn't have to worry about not being able to withstand it at all. At this time, the Heaven Awakening Divine Technique was activated, and Han Fei's injuries were collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Spiritual fruits, and essence from the origin sea were replenished one after another. Han Fei's qi and blood went from weak to strong, and gradually surged like waves. When Han Fei's body completely swelled, the Tao aura flowed on his body, and his aura seemed to have risen to a level visible to the naked eye. When the lightning baptism was completely over, before Han Fei had time to check his information, the great technique of the 9th level of the void fishing art appeared in his mind. Void theft art. When Han Fei really understood the so-called void theft art, he couldn't help but gasp in shock. This was actually a weird art that could steal other people's power. If the time fishing technique could fish out the old body of something from the past, then the time fishing technique could be used to fish something out. In that case, the void theft art could instantly steal someone else's great Tao, great art, actions, and even a sentence that someone else had said. As a result, others couldn't use the power that had been deprived repeatedly. Besides, it was not as simple as deprivation. Han Fei could choose to use the power that had been deprived. Gulp. Han Fei couldn't help swallowing. He knew that the 9th level of the void fishing art should be very strong, but he didn't expect it to be so strong. Stealing other people's things and turning them into your own use, there was actually such a weird technique in this world. This kind of power was fished out with the Tao aura of heaven and earth. It could be said that the void fishing art could use heaven and earth as a hook to fish for everything. Of course, such a heaven-defying technique would naturally have its limitations. That was, every ability that was taken away did not last very long. Besides, at the same time, it could only deprive 3 abilities of experts in the same realm, and the deprivation of 3 abilities could only be maintained. If it exceeded the limit, one of the deprived abilities would inevitably fail. However, when Han Fei learned that this great technique could actually deprive stronger experts of their power, that was to say, he could deprive an emperor-level expert of a certain kind of power. However, the deprivation of realms could only deprive one kind of power. If it exceeded 2 realms, this technique would be ineffective. Of course, it was impossible to exceed 2 realms. If it exceeded 2 realms, it would be equivalent to the level of gods. When one reached the level of gods, it might not be of much use to deprive others of their power with an emperor-level technique. However, in any case, the power of the void theft art was beyond Han Fei's imagination. After feeling the 9th level of the void fishing art, Han Fei was pleasantly surprised. He clearly had some strange insights this was not the end of the void fishing art. It seemed that no one had ever practiced the 9th level. This strange feeling swept across his heart. Han Fei was overjoyed and immediately looked at his personal information. Owner Han Fei level greater than 101, sky opening, C 10,000 family tree 200016, chaotic energy 660, 000 spiritual power 5461258, perception range 6. 5 million kilometers strength 500, 9698 waves, first spiritual heritage, primordial vein, second spiritual heritage, vein of eternal darkness, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 99, second spiritual beast emperor sparrow, level 100, main art void fishing art, level 9, void theft art, ultimate emperor. Shoot! Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. He knew that his physique would definitely soar after swallowing the moonlight brilliance, the god's crystal, and the heavenly law jade essence. However, he never expected that his physique would suddenly soar to more than 5 million wave. Is this the change in physique brought by the gold jade essence? Han Fei suddenly got up. At this moment, his body had almost recovered under the nourishment of the heaven-opening divine art. He didn't dare to waste time, because time couldn't be accelerated in the universe. Therefore, Han Fei withdrew to the Origin Sea as soon as possible. As soon as he entered the Origin Sea, Han Fei summoned the law of heaven and earth. He vaguely felt that his body carried part of the Tao of heaven and earth. It felt as if part of his body had been integrated into the Tao of heaven. For example, if Han Fei said, "I want fire," he could give birth to a flame with just a thought. This was not as simple as God said, "Let there be light." This was the power of fire that Han Fei could obtain from the Tao of heaven and earth. Similarly, Han Fei could also strengthen his own Tao or even his own strength from the Tao of heaven and earth. Han Fei tried to summon this power. Unfortunately, to his disappointment, he could only use the Tao of heaven and earth to enhance his combat power by 10%. This result was still a little disappointing for Han Fei. During the discussion in the Void Temple, Senior Brother Azure Dragon said that the law of balance could increase his strength by more than 50% with the help of the power of the Tao of heaven, but he could only increase it by 10%. It seemed that there was still a long way to go. Han Fei estimated that the gap should be because of the huge gap between his physique and soul. Even though he had been baptized by lightning and his previously unstable foundation was basically consolidated, he was still a little bit away from it. Besides, the law of balance was extremely difficult, so it was already not bad that he could borrow 10% of its power. Although his physique had skyrocketed, there was still a gap between the power of his soul and soul. Han Fei saw hope, because he could still convert the power of his soul and his physique. Although this kind of conversion shouldn't be too much, otherwise it would still affect his foundation. But he could convert it a little and sharpen it a little. Coupled with his daily cultivation, the law of balance wouldn't be far away. Maybe it had already been balanced before he went to the Divine Capital Dynasty. Chapter 2264. Although the completion of the 9th level of void fishing gave Han Fei a lot of help and also increased his strength a bit, and he could even directly use the power of the Way of Heaven to enhance himself. However, in the eyes of a real strong master, this growth in strength was still not enough. According to Han Fei's judgment, his current strength was still not comparable to old San of the Crab King City, and he could at most hold on for half an hour. Therefore, although his strength had skyrocketed this time, it was still not enough to face a real strong master. One day was too short. He had spent more than 2 hours to use up most of the resources on him. If he wanted to continue to improve his strength in such a short time, there was no other way but to continue to devour energy crystals. However, devouring the energy crystals would definitely cause an imbalance between his divine soul and physical body. This would cause all his previous efforts to go to waste. The enhancement of the power of the Way of Heaven that he had worked so hard to activate would inevitably disappear because of this situation. Therefore, except for normal cultivation, Han Fei would not use energy crystals again. With a thought, Han Fei appeared in the outside world. There was only 1 day in total, and he didn't want to hide in the Origin Sea. A strong master who could put him in a desperate situation might not be able to hide from a void node like the Origin Sea. Once the other party found the position and compared it to the Sea of Stars, It was very likely that they would find out where he was. He wanted to use the nautical panorama to find a safe point. But when he thought that he had used up all the times of the nautical panorama today, Han Fei couldn't help but feel that he was really stupid. But Han Fei didn't hesitate. The backlash of the nautical panorama was the backlash of luck. He was looking for a chance of survival, but if the backlash of luck happened, he might even be pushed into the abyss, which made him a little hesitant for a while. Forget it. Sooner or later, I'll have a day. I don't know where to run, so be it. Han Fei no longer hesitated. He directly took out the nautical panorama and said, "Point to my way of survival today." No longer hesitated. Han Fei took out the nautical panorama and said, "Point to my way of survival today." The nautical panorama immediately turned, but its direction gave Han Fei quite a shock. God's ruin? Han Fei couldn't help frowning. When he entered the God's ruin, he knew that it was divided into the inner periphery and the outer periphery. In fact, there were definitely many treasures hidden in the periphery. From his harvest over the past few days, he could tell that what everyone lacked was an opportunity to find treasures. For example, the existence of the heavenly chalcedony itself could conceal one's own opportunity. For example, the sacred bone could even create a self-sealing enchantment. Without the guidance of the navigator, it was impossible to find it in this endless mountain range. If he could find it, then it was really just pure luck. The inner area of the God's ruins was not a good place to be. Some people were looting the inner circle, but those who really broke into the inner circle had a slim chance of survival. This was one of the main reasons why Han Fei did not directly target the inner circle. However, the navigational panorama was pointing in the direction of the inner area, which meant that compared to the danger they would encounter, the inner area was a safe path. At least, it was not as scary as the danger they would encounter. He didn't have much time to think. It might not even be 10 seconds. Suddenly, Han Fei's face changed drastically. He sensed an unprecedented crisis. At this moment, a divine sense swept through the place where he was. F***ck so fast? Han Fei didn't know what to say. Is this the backfire of the multidimensional navigator? But it's too damn fast, isn't it? Can't you at least give me some time to think? At this moment, Han Fei no longer held back. He burst forth with the great path, instantly breaking out at the speed of light, and rushed toward the inner area of the God's ruins. Less than 20 million kilometers away from where Han Fei was, 3 middle-aged men stood with their hands behind their back. One of them looked up at the starry sky. Then, he looked at Han Fei's departing figure and smiled. It should be this guy. I just turned into a star at 3 times the speed of light? I really don't know who gave him the courage. I can't run away. At that moment the 3 of them moved. If Han Fei had seen their outburst of speed, he would have been extremely shocked. Among the 3 of them, the slowest one had reached 8 times the speed of light, and the fastest one had reached 9 times the speed of light or even higher. What did this mean? According to the theory of Senior Brother Azure Dragon and the others, under normal circumstances, the speed of the heaven-opening state was only within 10 times the speed of light. Since this person's speed was more than 9 times the speed of light, it meant that he was already on the verge of proving his Tao. His strength was probably at Zhao Hongwang's level. 1 was at Zhao Hongwang's level, and 2 were at Pan Litian's level. God knew why such a combination would appear in the wilderness. Swish, swish, swish. Han Fei did not dare to delay for even a moment. He ran at full speed. However, in this situation, after only 5 seconds, Han Fei felt a wave of energy 6 million kilometers behind him. F***ck. He's so fast. Han Fei felt terrible. He did not know if it was because the other party was too fast, but Han Fei could not even see the other party clearly. He only felt that the void was fluctuating, and the danger was getting closer. Kid, you can't run away. Stop. With such an absolute advantage in speed, Han Fei could not do anything. It was not that he was slow, but that the other party was too fast. When the middle-aged man behind Han Fei was less than 100,000 kilometers away from Han Fei, he pointed his finger lightly, and a starlight burst out from the gap between his fingers. He felt that with his speed, he would pass by Han Fei in the next moment and poke his body into pieces. Then the interception would be a success. However, at the most critical moment, Han Fei suddenly turned around and glanced at him, and the man, who was moving at 9 times the speed of light, came to a halt. He seemed to have forgotten about the superluminal speed. His body suddenly lost balance and crashed toward the seabed. Boom, thud, as if countless nuclear bombs had exploded, the man's body created a deep trench under the seabed. The roars and explosions spread out and probably didn't stop until they spread for more than 100,000 kilometers. At that moment, in the middle-aged man's perception, Han Fei's speed suddenly soared from 3 times the speed of light to 6 times the speed of light. What astonished him was that this kid's superluminal outburst was actually so familiar. Wasn't that his own unique Great Tao? Han Fei had already figured out how to run. However, when his speed only reached 6 times the speed of light, he felt terrible. Something was wrong with the last level of void fishing. Although void fishing could make someone else's power his own, he was not someone else's. However, he was not someone else. His physique, power, and Great Tao were all different from that middle-aged man. Therefore, he couldn't completely copy the man's speed. His current body could bear the power of 6 times the speed of light at most. It was not that Han Fei didn't want to go faster, but he couldn't go faster at all. He had reached his limit. Han Fei was a little disappointed, but he didn't think there was a problem. It was just that his expectations were too high. Otherwise, if the void-stealing technique was really so terrifying, wouldn't it be possible to completely steal the power of a venerable emperor regardless of his body's limit, so that he could gain the full combat ability of a venerable emperor in a short time? This was so powerful that it made one's hair stand on end. However, this speed theft gave Han Fei an unexpected benefit, which was that Han Fei had to perceive a brand new way of space to be able to move 6 times the speed of light. Yes, this man used the spaceway to boost his speed to more than 9 times the speed of light. However, in contrast, Han Fei also knew the spaceway, but he couldn't achieve such a fast speed. The fundamental reason was that he didn't have enough understanding of the spaceway. However, the moment he stole this man's power that was faster than light, Han Fei suddenly understood a lot about the usage of the spaceway. Han Fei couldn't help but feel shocked. So the most powerful thing about the void-stealing technique was not only to steal other people's power, but also to steal other people's understanding, great paths, and even the principles of other people's power. That was King terrifying. Didn't it mean that as long as he stole more and more power, he would eventually understand more and more things? Given time, he would be able to achieve a comprehensive improvement in his combat techniques and understanding of great paths with just void stealing. Just thinking about it made Han Fei's heart skip a beat. Swish, swish, as soon as Han Fei escaped from the perception range of that expert, 2 experts who were equally fast caught up with him. One of them was shocked. "Elder E, what are you doing?" The middle-aged man who had just come out of the trench looked awful. He said, "Take me with you. Let's go after him." Although the 2 of them were confused, they took the middle-aged man with them without hesitation. Then, the middle-aged man said, "This guy is weird. I'm afraid he has more than one ultra-quality divine weapon. He can deprive me of my speed and make me temporarily forget the super speed of the spaceway. Except for the super speed of the spaceway, my understanding of other great paths can only reach 7 times the speed of light at most." "What? Deprive him of his speed? How can he do that? I've never heard of it." The middle-aged man said, "I don't know. It may be a special great path. But he can't completely grasp my speed. So, when he explodes, he can only move 6 times the speed of light. It's not difficult to catch up with him if I spend a little time. Chapter 2265. Han Fei didn't dare to stop at this moment. The crisis of desperation was not that simple. Although his temporary breakthrough might change his luck, he didn't dare to be careless. However, he did not dare to be careless, because the crisis that had enveloped his body had not disappeared. At this moment, he was rushing toward the interior of God's ruin at a terrifying speed of 6 times the speed of light. Because he didn't know if the stolen power had a time limit, and if it did, how long could it be used. These were all things that he needed to consider. Han Fei also wanted to accelerate the time around him with the great path of time. However, maybe because his speed was too fast, the great path of time and the great path of space somehow intersected. He didn't have time to accelerate the time around him, so he couldn't continue to increase his speed. Then, to Han Fei's shock, after only 10 seconds, a blurry figure behind him caught up. Oh, not just one, but 2. Han Fei couldn't help but feel his blood freeze. There were more than one of them? One of them was the middle-aged man who had just attacked him, and he didn't know the other person. It seemed that he was also with them. And this person also had such a fast speed? He caught up with the middle-aged man. After running for less than 1 second, Han Fei judged that the person chasing behind him had reached 8 times the speed of light. There's a secret. Han Fei's first thought was not how he could escape this disaster, but he confirmed one thing, which was that God's ruin was a secret. Otherwise, it was impossible for 2 supermasters of this level to appear in a row. 8 times the speed of light, 6 times the speed of light. Han Fei estimated that according to this speed, the other party would catch up with him in 4 seconds at most. In other words, he wouldn't even need 1 second. However, for now, Han Fei was still confident that he could continue to steal this person's speed. However, at the moment when the second middle-aged man was 1,000,000 kilometers away from him, the first middle-aged man that was being dragged by the second middle-aged man suddenly broke free from the other middle-aged man's grasp and burst forth with superluminal speed that was even faster than his current speed. Shoot, Han Fei couldn't help but be horrified. These people also took more than one great path. This great path of space had been taken away by him, but there were other great paths that could allow them to move faster than the speed of light. Now, Han Fei didn't think about anything else at all. Anyway, he couldn't let these 2 catch up with him. If an expert of this level caught up to him, he would not be able to block it. So, when Han Fei looked back again, the 2 of them cast protective barriers at the same time and even used Tao patterns to block his divine soul. However, in the next moment, both of them lost their speed at the same time and fell directly into the seabed of the pit. Boom, boom, great waves surged at the bottom of the ocean again. 2 trenches appeared, crushed by these 2 individuals. Countless creatures were smashed to death by these 2 individuals. But at this moment, Han Fei didn't leave. He suddenly found that his understanding of void theft was a bit too simple. So that these 2 people can't chase me, why should I just deprive them of their speed? If they had other great daos of speed and continued to chase after him, how would he be able to deprive them? Therefore, Han Fei did not escape. Instead, he swept past the 2 of them and directly gave up on the 2 great Tao insights that he had stolen. Instead, he directly deprived their consciousness. He wanted to fundamentally stop these 2 from chasing him and make them fall into a deep sleep. Wouldn't his goal be achieved this way? However, the next moment, Han Fei felt that he was too naive. The 2 powerhouses fell into a state of chaos at the same time, but they were still far from falling into a deep sleep. Han Fei immediately found that he was not strong enough to make them fall into a deep sleep. He could only temporarily make them fall into a state of dizziness and chaos. Besides, Han Fei could feel that with the strength of these 2 people, they couldn't last long in this state. He estimated that if they could last for half an hour, they would be grateful. Ignoring these 2 people, Han Fei continued to run for his life. According to his calculation, it might take more than an hour to reach the god's ruins. Han Fei couldn't help but be speechless. Why was the wilderness so big? Why was the sea realm so big? I'm already running faster than the speed of light, but it still takes so long to run from one place to another. This is too much. Han Fei didn't know that in fact, in the dark, there was actually someone watching here. However, this person didn't pay attention to Han Fei. His eyes had been fixed on the two powerhouses. When he saw these two people fall into a state of chaos with his own eyes, his heart couldn't help but tighten. He didn't know what method the kid had used. About 100 breaths later, Han Fei was running wildly, when he suddenly saw the space in front of him suddenly open, and there appeared a white door of light. Han Fei saw a figure bathed in white light standing at the door. Hiss! Heavenly Clan, the gate of heaven? Han Fei's heart trembled. This door was too unique. Before Han Fei entered the Sea Realm, he had heard Chu Hao talk about the Heavenly Clan, because Chu Hao was sure that a small vine of the demon purification pot was in the Heavenly Clan. After entering the chaotic wasteland, he often heard about some super forces in the Sea Realm, including the Gate of Heaven, the Boundless Mining Area, the Fist Light Mountain, the Eastern Sword Pavilion, the Ghost Strait, the City of Terror, and so on. Although people didn't know what kind of forces these were, it didn't prevent people from knowing that such forces existed in the divine land of the East Sea. No wonder there are 3 people on the other side. Han Fei thought for a moment. The one who found him first should be the fastest and the strongest. But he didn't expect that he would have such a powerful skill as void theft. The second one to catch up should be relatively faster. He caught up with the first person, and the first person gave him information, and then the two of them caught up together. However, these 2 people didn't know that his void theft could be used 3 times, so they were tricked again. And this person should be weaker than the other 2, but probably not by much. However, Han Fei couldn't figure out why the other party's experts were chasing him. When did the Gate of Heaven and the Ghost Strait have such a close relationship? Were they trying to avenge the people in the Ghost Strait? Han Fei couldn't help but stop, because the person opposite him didn't do anything, and he didn't see the person clearly, so he wasn't sure if the person was a real person. The reason why he dared to stop was that the 2 people behind should still be trapped in the chaos and hadn't woken up. Even if another strong person like that came, he still had Shui Sha to use. But one thing he had to figure out was why the other party was looking for him. Han Fei said solemnly, "Who are you? Why are you stopping me?" The strong man in the light gate took a few steps out, revealing his resolute face. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. This middle-aged man's temperament was exactly the same as the previous 2 people, with an inexplicable arrogance. The middle-aged man said, "Originally, I just wanted to take away the divine artifact with divinity from you, and I might not really kill you. But now it seems that your secret is probably not as simple as that divine artifact. You've just turned into a star, but you were able to trap 2 strong people at the edge of the Tao Proving Realm. It seems that you have a lot of secrets. Divine artifact with divinity? God-slaying gloves?" Han Fei immediately understood. Suddenly, he understood a little. Because the God-slaying gloves were made of holy bones, they could allow people to see strange paths of divinity, and they were listed as high-quality divine artifacts. When fighting with those people in the Ghost Strait, the God-slaying gloves erupted with terrifying power. Especially when the Emperor Sparrow used its own body to directly penetrate their sun souls, this scene should have been seen by others. And Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. At that time, among all the people, the only person who was a little strange was the man in golden armor. That person was the first to run. At that time, Han Fei thought that he was a disciple of some big clan and slipped away when he saw the situation was not right. Now it seemed that that person's attire and temperament were somewhat similar to these people. He was probably from the door of heaven. In an instant, Han Fei's many puzzles were instantly solved. The people of the Heavenly Clan were exploring the secrets of the gods' ruins, and there happened to be a few super strong people here. His weakness was that he knew too little about the sea realm, so he didn't discover the identity of the man in golden armor immediately. Otherwise, if he had killed that person immediately, these things wouldn't have happened now. Now that he had exposed too much, even if he gave the god-slaying gloves to them, this person probably wouldn't let him go. Thinking of this, Han Fei immediately sneered. If you want my treasures, then come and take them. At this moment, Han Fei was 5 million kilometers away from that person. This was the distance he deliberately kept. If he was too close, he was afraid that he would be blocked by some kind of big formation and unable to escape. Without saying a word, Han Fei rushed out again. But at this moment, in the direction that Han Fei escaped to, a figure walked out. In an instant, that figure burst out with a terrifying speed that was at least comparable to his own. Han Fei was shocked. With a flip of his hand, Shueisha appeared and rushed towards the figure, while he turned around and ran in another direction. If Han Fei's guess was right, since the man in golden armor ran away, he wouldn't forget the existence of Shueisha. Now that there seemed to be a lot of people on the other side, even if he had to give up Shueisha, he had to save his life. But on the other side, as soon as Han Fei ran out, he saw another figure blocking his way. That figure was holding a sword, and it burst out with power that was definitely at the late stage of the star transformation realm, slashing at Han Fei. In such a situation, Han Fei didn't dare to be careless. With a thought, the figure in front of him suddenly collapsed, and a sword shadow appeared in Han Fei's hand. It was the sword shadow just now. At this moment, Han Fei gave up 6 times the speed of light and obtained this sword shadow. He thought that he could steal speed at any time, but in the face of these strong people, he couldn't resist at all. But he was shocked to find that this was actually a F*King clone. After being deprived of the power of this sword shadow, this clone actually shattered. F*CK. Chapter 2266. When Han Fei found that the man was just a clone, he immediately understood. There were only 3 strong people at the late stage of the celestial transformation realm. This undoubtedly gave Han Fei a shot in the arm. He was afraid that there were still strong people behind. If that was the case, even if he had the void stealing technique, what could he do to these people? However, even if 2 people failed to catch up, the man in front of him was not easy to deal with. He obviously already knew that he had the void stealing technique. So, he took out a clone to intercept him. Sure enough, when he stole the power of the sword, the middle-aged man who walked out of the light gate suddenly made a move, and a white sword light suddenly appeared in front of Han Fei. Han Fei only had time to block this attack with the power he stole. Clang Biem, the place where Han Fei was instantly detonated, and his whole body was directly blasted 100,000 miles away. His body kept retreating in the void, and there was a slight dent in his chest. Huh! The middle-aged man seemed a little surprised. This person's physique was actually this strong. Although he stole the power of his blow, it was just an ordinary blow. And this time, he used a full 80% of his strength in an attempt to directly pierce through him. Cough, cough. Han Fei spat out a mouthful of golden essence blood, and before he could stabilize his body, another void appeared behind him. This time, Han Fei learned his lesson. He knew that this person should be just a clone, so he didn't pay attention to this clone. Instead, he controlled Shueisha to attack the middle-aged man. Shueisha naturally rushed over immediately, but this time, Han Fei casually punched out, trying to slightly block the attack of the clone. As a result, with a bang, the fist mark suddenly burst into pieces, and the clone, which should have no combat power, burst out a terrifying power and almost pierced Han Fei with a sword. Dong dong boom. Han Fei broke through the void again, and was knocked into reality by the clone from the void, hitting the seabed and creating a trench. Cough cough. At this time, Han Fei saw the main body and Shueisha rushing towards him at the same time. At that moment, Han Fei ran the great Tao, and the god-slaying gloves appeared in his hands. Sacrificing punch. The middle-aged man pressed his palm at Han Fei, trying to kill Han Fei with one slap. However, with the full power of the Great Path, the power that Han Fei could unleash was probably not inferior to his. He punched out, setting off a terrifying explosion in the area where the two of them were, and the turbulence of the sea surged outward wildly. When Shueisha arrived, his withered hand slapped the middle-aged man's body. The middle-aged man's body withered at a visible speed. Clang, deprivation. This middle-aged man wasn't stupid. After clearly discovering that Han Fei had the ability to steal other people's power, he didn't intend to use his main body to attack, or he wouldn't use his main body unless it was absolutely necessary. Therefore, the person that Han Fei and Shueisha pierced through was just a clone. Han Fei stretched out his hand and a sword light flashed. Han Fei, who was already prepared, didn't even look back. The next moment, the sword light behind him disappeared and reappeared in Han Fei's hand. Holding a sword in one hand and the nautical globe in the other, Han Fei charged in the direction of the nautical globe. Bang! The terrifying sword chi cut through the void, cut through the illusion, swept thousands of miles, and cut out a phantom in the void. At the moment Han Fei slashed out this sword, he gave up the power to control the sword, turned to look at the phantom, and with a cold look in his eyes, he continued to steal power. This time, what Han Fei stole was the opponent's instantaneous reaction. Puff, the phantom who was about to attack suddenly fell into a daze and didn't react in time to block Han Fei's sword. Finally, when the sword chi rushed over, it directly pierced through the phantom. The result made Han Fei's heart turn cold. This turned out to be another clone. The other party had already left at the moment when he determined his position, and he had to bear the backlash of luck brought by the nautical globe again. Han Fei suddenly had a realization. The consciousness of the first two strong masters he stole seemed to be about to be broken by the other party. So fast. Han Fei was horrified. He couldn't continue to fight. This King bad luck came so suddenly. He could have withstood at least half an hour, but now the other party broke free of him within half an hour. If the other party really chased after him, with his current strength, it would be impossible for him to escape. At that moment, Han Fei put away the nautical globe, looked at the empty light gate in the void, and said lightly, "You don't dare to come out to see me." However, in the void, 4 or 5 people walked out in a row. The middle-aged man sneered. "Why wouldn't I dare to come out to see a junior like you? For now, the power you can steal is limited. When you stole my first power, your 6 times the speed of light disappeared. I guess you can't steal multiple powers at once. You should be able to steal 3 powers at the same time, but you have already used it on 2 of them, so you can only steal 1 power from me at a time. You want to force my body to show up, so that you can directly steal a certain power from my body and buy time for you to escape. I have to say, this is a kind of divine technique. I will search your soul and find out your soul." Han Fei frowned. "Do you think you can defeat me?" The middle-aged man snorted coldly. "You are just a kid who hasn't turned into a star. Do you think you can escape? Even if you're a genius, how can you escape from my palm?" With that said, the middle-aged man smiled contemptuously. "Woo, and your nautical globe, it can find me. It seems that it is also a great treasure. You have 2 rare treasures and a weird divine technique. If you were born in our heavenly clan, we would definitely cultivate you well. What a pity." Han Fei narrowed his eyes. "Really? By the way, I have something to tell you." The middle-aged man sneered. "You are just bluffing. Do you think you can escape with such a little time?" Han Fei scoffed. "Hey, what I want to tell you is that I greet your ancestors." The middle-aged man's eyes turned cold. Not interested in wasting time with this kid, he directly rushed at him. However, in front of Han Fei, the river of time suddenly appeared, and a figure seemed to want to drill into the river of time. The middle-aged man sneered. How dare you enter the river of time? But come out. The middle-aged man stepped into the river of time. The moment he entered the river of time, he felt that his ability to move was deprived, and his body was rapidly decaying. But the next moment it turned out that this person was just a clone. Just at the moment Han Fei attacked, outside the river of time, the middle-aged man appeared in an instant and hit the river of time, blasting Han Fei out. After this blow, the middle-aged man just wanted to disappear, but he felt that nothing could appear in his mind, and he fell into chaos. At this time, another Han Fei appeared, and he sneered. Do you think you are the only one who can send a clone? Han Fei didn't try to stuff this middle-aged man into the river of time, or bring him to a certain period of time in the past, because there was a time limit to stealing the other party's consciousness. Once he entered the river of time, the other party might wake up instantly. Then all his previous efforts would be in vain. Han Fei's face was slightly pale. When he returned to the outside world, he used the Apocalypse Divine technique to heal himself and set off at full speed again. Because he had experienced the great path of space of the middle-aged man before, when Han Fei operated his own great path of space, he could already burst out at 4 times the speed of light, which was a small gain. On the basis of 4 times the speed of light, Han Fei accelerated himself with the great path of time, so that even if he didn't steal the other's speed, he could still exert a speed of nearly 6 times the speed of light. He didn't dare to hesitate and moved forward at full speed, because the strongest of the 3 should have woken up. He had only left them behind for 100 seconds in total, and he had been delayed for more than 10 seconds. If the other party chased him at 9 times the speed of light, it wouldn't take long for them to catch up with him. In less than 100 seconds. At the place where Han Fei and the many clones were fighting just now, the leader of the heavenly race grabbed the void and pulled the man out. This man frowned. He felt it was ridiculous. The 3 of them, who were almost at the peak of the star transformation realm, were defeated by a kid who hadn't even reached the star transformation realm? As soon as he woke up, he tried to wake up the other person, but he found that the other person's consciousness was blurred and in chaos. But since the kid didn't take advantage of the chaos to attack them, one reason was that he couldn't kill them, and the other was that he didn't dare to stay. Since he had woken up, they could naturally wake up too. It was only a matter of time. Therefore, when he saw the clones fall into chaos, he grabbed at them casually and continued to chase after Han Fei. The door of heaven had already become enemies with this person. Even if they didn't become enemies, this person had too many secrets. The purpose of this trip was to investigate the god's ruins. It was a pity that they couldn't enter the inner periphery of the god's ruins, but they encountered such a strange guy in the outer periphery. If they could capture this person, they might be able to gain some secret. Chapter 2267. After this battle, Han Fei was shocked to find that even though the void-stealing technique was extremely powerful, it was still not enough in front of a real powerhouse. This was due to his lack of basic strength. Although he could barely fight with a powerhouse in the late stage of the star transformation realm after activating the Great Tao, the gap was still a bit too big. In particular, at the heaven-opening realm, one could actually send a clone at any time. Even without the heaven-opening realm, a sea-opening realm powerhouse could also send many clones at any time as long as they were willing to use their divine soul power. When one reached the heaven-opening stage, they could easily take out a portion of their spirit's power and power to create a powerful identity with the power to launch a single attack. Therefore, after knowing the horror of the void-stealing technique, the people of the Sky Clan were unwilling to fight him head-on. The reason why he was able to force that person to appear in his original body was because he wanted to penetrate the river of time. A clone might be able to do it, but its power was not enough. Because of this, Han Fei was able to force him to appear for a moment and seize the opportunity. And the him in the river of time was not his current self, but his past self. Taking advantage of the moment, he entered the river of time. He fished up his past self with the time fishing technique. As for his true self, he had used the Gemini divine incantation in the previous battle and hid his body in the black mist. Therefore, the result seemed simple, but the process was not simple at all. In general, Han Fei was quite satisfied with the result of this battle. This meant that he temporarily had the capital to compete with a late-stage star transformation realm powerhouse. As a person who had only been in the heaven-opening realm for more than 300 years, being able to compete with a late-stage star transformation realm powerhouse, or even a powerhouse on the verge of the Tao-proving realm, even in the sea realm, was a sensational thing. But what Han Fei couldn't figure out was what the gate of heaven meant. Was it a gate? Things couldn't be so simple. He knew too little about the Sky Clan. He only knew that outsiders called the Gate of Heaven and that it was a major force in the East Sea Divine Land. The status of the Gate of Heaven was equal to that of the Divine Capital Dynasty and the Terror Capital. It was even more famous than other forces, so it was impossible for them to appear just to show off. Just like the triangular divine seal of the infamily in the chaotic wasteland, the gods' arrival was equally terrifying. They claimed to be able to borrow the power of gods. Han Fei wondered if an emperor-level master would be able to cast the gods' arrival. If there were, did it mean that not all the gods had fallen? Of course, these were all Han Fei's assumptions. He just felt that there was something wrong with the Gate of Heaven. Once he escaped this time, he would definitely study it carefully. As the saying goes, know the enemy and know yourself, and you will emerge victorious in every battle. After 270 breaths, Han Fei had no idea if there was anyone chasing after him, but he knew that he had to make the best use of his time to escape. He was still a distance away from the inner area of the god's ruin. He estimated that in another 200 breaths of time, he would have been running for almost an hour. If he were to unleash his superluminal speed, he would probably be able to reach the inner area of the god's ruin in another 200 to 300 breaths. However, the more he didn't want something, the more likely it would happen. Han Fei continued to run wildly. In less than 10 minutes, a voice appeared in his mind. "You think you can run away?" Motherf ****. Han Fei didn't know what to do and kept an eye on this person. At this moment, the power that he had deprived had all disappeared. This meant that the two people who had fallen into chaos had woken up one after another. What Han Fei was worried about now was not that the person behind him was chasing him, but that the two people who had fallen into a deep sleep would attack him together. At this moment, hearing this person's voice transmission, Han Fei felt terrible all over. After knowing that Han Fei could steal their power, the middle-aged man in the lead would definitely not be stupid enough to rush up and fight him alone. If it were Han Fei, he would definitely throw his two companions into his sea of origin. If this person was not as strong as the previous two, he should be able to take them with him. There was no reason for him to leave them where they were. It was just that Han Fei didn't know all this. At this moment, this person really caught up with him. Han Fei's heart was solemn, but he didn't stop running wildly. Two figures appeared one after another, one behind Han Fei, and the other on Han Fei's side. One of these two people was the strong man who had just fought fiercely with him. But Han Fei didn't see the strong man who could burst out at 9 times the speed of light. The other party's speed was far faster than his, which meant that he was probably in front of him. Han Fei's heart sank. Behind him, the middle-aged man who had just fought fiercely with him said coldly, "Boy, even if the gods come today, they can't save you." Han Fei ignored this person. He wanted to continue running forward, but the two people quickly approached him. However, Han Fei didn't use the void stealing technique. These two people were not stupid. Since they dared to chase him, they must not be stupid. How could they make the same mistake again? Therefore, the two people who were chasing him now were just clones. With the strength that the doppelganger could sustain, maintaining such a high speed for 10 breaths of time was already not bad. Therefore, their purpose was to intercept Han Fei. Swish, swish, the two clones attacked one after another. They didn't hide their identities. In the short fight, since they had figured out Han Fei's means, it was naturally very easy to find a way to deal with it. Sure enough, at the moment when the two clones attacked, a clone projection also appeared in front of Han Fei at the same time. And 4 of them appeared at once. However, Han Fei didn't even blink and directly rushed at the 4 people. Why are there 4 clones here? Of course, I'm testing them. Han Fei knew very well what these people were thinking. They were testing to see if Han Fei could steal the power of these 4 clones at the same time. The 4 clones attacked at the same time, almost blocking Han Fei's way. In fact, these people had basically come to a conclusion, but just in case they tried this time. And Han Fei had nothing to hide. They didn't know who he was. So far, he had shown the void-stealing technique, the god-slaying gloves, a strong physique, the great path of time. However, in addition to these great paths, he still had many great paths. Therefore, as long as he could escape, Han Fei didn't mind being exposed this time. Swish, at the moment when the 4 people were about to attack, the attacks of 3 of the clones were instantly stolen by Han Fei. Han Fei stretched out his hand and waved, and 3 big techniques instantly smashed at the 4th clone. Boom! Han Fei swept past and didn't care about the final situation of the battle at all. This was just a tentative attack. He needed time now, and 1 breath was also time, right? In the void in front of Han Fei, 3 middle-aged men were walking side by side. One of them said, "Sure enough, this kid can only steal 3 times at a time. In this way, we don't even need to do anything. Our clones should be able to pierce through him." Another person shook his head. "Not necessarily 3 times. Maybe he is just doing it to show you. After all, everyone wants to keep a trump card in their hand. However, I think your idea of using clones to fight is correct. This kid's methods are weird. I don't want my real body to suffer again. Otherwise, I'll lose my face." The middle-aged man in the lead said, "We can give it a try." Han Fei knew that nothing good was waiting for him. At this time, he couldn't do nothing. For now, the void-stealing technique couldn't give him a sense of security. The only thing that could give him a sense of security were the 3 void marks that his eldest senior brother gave him. However, Han Fei knew that he had to face a lot of things. At present, there were 3 emperors on his must-kill list. If he relied on his eldest senior brother, how many times could the void marks help him? Besides, after today, the Heavenly Clan would also be on his list. At least, if he didn't turn the world upside down, he wouldn't be able to get over it. At this moment, Han Fei's void lines reached into time. He was looking for who he should fish up and who he could fish up. 12 clones suddenly appeared in front of him, which made Han Fei's heart skip a beat. "Son of AB*TCH, if I had a chance, I would definitely kill you." Han Fei asked, "Emperor Sparrow, do the people of the Heavenly Clan know you?" Emperor Sparrow replied, "I know them from my inherited memory, but I don't have any contact with them. As a primeval beast, I usually fight with the divine beasts and don't care about those humanoid clans." Hearing this, Han Fei immediately said, "How many clones can your Eye of Cholera affect at the level of the Blood Fiend?" 3, but they must be clones, or at most 1, and the duration of the Eye of Cholera is very short. Han Fei grinned. "Okay, fuse." Swished, a pair of black wings suddenly grew out of Han Fei's back, and his eyes turned scarlet. Looking at the clones opposite him, it was meaningless to turn around and run, because the 3 experts were definitely stronger than him. Seeing that Han Fei didn't intend to stop at all, the 3 experts couldn't help but wonder what else Han Fei could do. However, Han Fei's eyes lit up. Among the 12 clones, 3 of them were lost for no reason, and the attacks launched by the other 9 clones were instantly stolen. In just a moment, the 6 clones lost control. Sure enough, He has a backup plan, but it shouldn't be that weird great technique, but his associated spirit. The leader sneered. Even so, he can't make it. Just as the leader said, even if Han Fei stole 3 streams of power, it was still not enough. Those who were affected by the Eye of Cholera would attack randomly, but they wouldn't be accurate. In the end, there were still 6 clones. One twisted the void and sucked Han Fei into the crowd, so that he couldn't escape, and the other slashed out a terrifying sword light at Han Fei. The rest had different methods, but they all rushed at him. Han Fei stepped on the ground and made a prompt decision. The 3 streams of power he stole detonated at the same time, and an endless void vortex appeared here. Because they were clones, it was difficult to maintain the follow-up power after the power of this clone exploded. Therefore, all of a sudden, the 12 clones, together with Han Fei, fell into the endless void. At this moment, one of the clones used the Great Tao of Void, directly twisted the void, and took Han Fei out. They wanted Han Fei's treasures and divine technique. Why would they want to fall into the endless void? Looking at the 20 clones around him, Han Fei took a deep breath. He knew that if he continued to play like this, he would be killed sooner or later. He immediately roared, "Disaster! Disaster!" Chapter 2268. When the strong master caught up, Han Fei knew that if he didn't have any special means, he wouldn't be able to escape. He didn't have any powerful weapons on him. At the heaven-opening realm, the only things that were useful to them were the secret treasures of the Emperor level. Of course, even if they had rare treasures, they wouldn't dare to take them out at this moment, because they didn't know if he could steal their treasures and divine weapons. But this kind of strong master at the star transformation realm didn't need treasures like divine weapons to deal with Han Fei. Just like now, the more than 20 doppelganger projections were suppressing Han Fei. At this time, Han Fei had no choice but to launch the Eye of Disaster. He couldn't run away now. Han Fei simply stopped running. With a thought, Xuesha was released. Following Han Fei's command, Xuesha immediately rushed out. Then Han Fei sneered, "You 3, you want to kill me with just your doppelgangers? Don't you think you're underestimating me?" At this moment, Han Fei held his head high, looking down at the battle in front of him, his eyes full of disdain. The 3 strong masters of the Tian clan looked pale at this moment. When they saw Xuesha destroy a doppelganger with one blow, they had already judged his combat power. How could Xuesha, who is on the verge of Tao confirming, be controlled by such a kid? What should we do? Although that kid can only steal power 3 times, this kind of crafty technique is too terrifying. He can even steal our thoughts and Tao. If his strength is equal to ours, who under the Emperor level can do anything to him? Yes, this kind of crafty technique shouldn't exist. How can there be such a weird technique in this world? The leader frowned and said, "This technique can't be so invincible. We can't resist it, but maybe we don't know the reason. Or maybe there are some limitations of this technique that we don't know. Since ordinary doppelgangers can't stop him, let's send stronger doppelgangers. For now, it seems that this kid can't fully use Xuesha's real strength. This is our chance. I'll block Xuesha." Han Fei ignored the doppelgangers. Although this was not the primitive ancient land, Xuesha could use more than just evil qi. After being turned into a puppet, he would be able to call upon the power of heaven and earth on his own. Just 20 celestial transformation grand late-stage avatars could only last a few dozen rounds against blood fiends. In the blink of an eye, 7 or 8 celestial transformation late-stage clones had been killed. During this period, of course, some clones passed by Xuesha and went straight for Han Fei. But after all, it wasn't his original body, and he didn't have a continuous outburst, so he could take away their power. With the power of this clone, Han Fei directly rushed into the array and fought with Xuesha. Boom, boom, boom. In the gods' ruins, many people were watching the Sea of Stars because there were suddenly 4 large stars in the Sea of Stars that were incomparably bright. This sudden situation was naturally noticed by many people. But this time, no one was willing to join the fun in the direction of the explosion of starlight. How could anyone who dared to shine so brightly in the sea of stars be an ordinary person? Everyone looked at the stars, searched for enemies, and hunted for a long time. For example, it would take a lot of effort to search for prey on a moving fortress of sea monsters. Because the starlight was not bright, prey was hard to find. But today, the big stars were shining brightly, flashing with light. Something big must have happened. Otherwise, how could it be so bright? It was caused by the abnormal use of the power of the Great Path in the Origin Sea. At this moment, Han Fei had already defeated 70% to 80% of this group of clones. Han Fei sneered. 3 stinky pieces of sh*t from the Heavenly Clan, are you really not going to come out? If you don't come out, I'm leaving. If you don't kill me today, next time I meet someone from the Heavenly Clan, I'll kill one if I see one, and if I see a pair, I'll kill a pair. Our enmity has been sown. Humph, you brat, don't talk big. Buzz, 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 5 figures descended from the sky in a row. Han Fei's heart trembled. These were still clones, and the other party didn't hide them. However, this doppelganger was on a completely different level from the previous one. Just like Han Fei could use the void descent technique, he could summon clones of different levels and strengths according to his need. And these 5 clones, their strength might be the same as the clones just now, but their continuous fighting ability was definitely different. Among them, the leader's body was glowing with red light, holding 2 swords in his hands. He waved his sword casually, setting off a sword tide, and the sword light almost blinded Han Fei's eyes. The man went straight to the blood fiend, entangling with a long dragon made of murderous intent. With a thought, Han Fei activated the Great Path of Heaven, and a terrifying power poured into his body. The power of the master holding the 2 swords was suddenly reduced by 70%, while Han Fei's strength skyrocketed. As for Han Fei, his strength skyrocketed. At the same time, he deprived the consciousness of 2 of the clones. Han Fei laughed and said, 3 sons of B***cheese, are you so poor? You want to kill me with just 5 clones? I wonder where your confidence comes from. The 2 clones fell into chaos and attacked indiscriminately. And the clone that had been entangling the blood fiend, because of the great loss of power, was blasted back 30,000 miles by the blood fiend. Han Fei's strength skyrocketed, summoning thousands of miles of knife waves, overwhelming his 2 clones. Behind, the 3 people of the Heavenly Clan looked calm. They didn't think that the 5 clones could take down Han Fei. However, the 5 clones did control Han Fei. At this time, in the field, 4 more clones descended, and the leader of the Heavenly Clan said curiously, "You know that with your current means, you can't win at all. You can make the 3 of them lose control and seize their abilities. Plus this blood fiend, plus yourself, 8 clones should be the limit you can bear. I want to see how you are going to deal with these 9 clones." The leader was not in a hurry, as if he was not in a hurry to kill Han Fei at all. If it was just him alone, he might not be able to take down Han Fei with 9 clones. However, there were 3 late-stage star transformation cultivators here. Although they were not perfect, it was more than enough to create a few super clones. In fact, when Han Fei saw the 4 clones appear, he was really worried. The Eye of Disaster hadn't caused any abnormalities yet. If it dragged on for too long, maybe he would have been killed by them. The Eye of Chaos broke out, but this time, the clones were not the kind that could only be used once, so only 2 clones were out of control. Seeing this scene, the leader of the Heavenly Clan couldn't help but smile. "Wu, it seems that your power is limited. The stronger you are, the less likely it is to lose control. I overestimated you. So, what other trump cards do you have now?" At this moment, the void suddenly changed, and the clones that were out of control were isolated by the void. The blood fiend was teleported away by some kind of spatial force. Here, there were 3 sane powerhouses left. Although Han Fei had stolen the power of the leader's clone, it was still unrealistic to fight against 3 at this moment. As soon as the 2 sides clashed, Han Fei fell into the void storm. This was the opponent's Dao, and Han Fei, who also walked this Dao, was not as deep as the leader's. So although he tried to stir the void, his power was soon suppressed. As for the other 2 clones, one was good at sword techniques and the other was good at palm technique. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei's scalp was numb. Clank, clank, bm, bm, bm. However, as soon as the 2 sides clashed, they found that their terrifying power couldn't penetrate Han Fei. Although the sword chi cut Han Fei's skin and flesh, it couldn't cut through his jade bones. Although the palm technique exploded, it couldn't crush Han Fei's flesh and blood. Although the void storm was violent, Han Fei's physique was too strong, and the effects seemed to be the same as the sword chi. Even though Han Fei was covered in wounds in the blink of an eye, these clones were also injured. Heaven and earth law. Han Fei completely ignored the energy pouring out and performed the golden fist mark. In an instant, he punched thousands of times, causing huge waves and the void to explode. The 3 clones fought with Han Fei for more than 10 minutes, but this guy still maintained such peak power. The 3 people behind the scenes looked horrified at this moment. This kid shouldn't be so strong. One of them said, "Did he use a secret method?" Another person said, "I don't know why, but I can't see the depths of his soul sea, but when I looked at the star sea, I found that he hasn't turned into a star yet." The leader's eyes turned cold. "Yes, I think so too. Now that you said that, I'm even more sure that he hasn't turned into a star." At that moment, the 3 of them were shocked. A person who hadn't turned into a star, even if he was a peerless heavenly talent, could resist the siege of the 3 clones, which meant that his strength had skyrocketed at least 3 times. And this was just their conservative estimate. In fact, based on the strength of the top heavenly talents of the heavenly clan, if a heavenly talent who hadn't turned into a star wanted to be comparable to the 3 clones, his strength would at least skyrocket by more than 5 times. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to compete with their clones. Bam! 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 Exchanging injuries for the 3 clones, Han Fei was counting the time. In another 7 or 8 minutes, he might need to reverse time. And at the moment when time was reversed, the 3 of them might attack. For a heaven-opening state powerhouse, they could step into the river of time for a short time. As long as they killed him in the river of time, there would be no possibility for him to reverse time. Therefore, 7 or 8 minutes later was the key. At this time, Han Fei suddenly had a great sense of crisis, because he saw a figure descending. This was the one who summoned the light gate before and had fought with him. However, this time, Han Fei felt that this person was very similar to his original body. Han Fei was just about to deprive this person of his consciousness and let him attack randomly, but a new projection appeared behind him again. Han Fei knew that the 3 of them were serious. This clone probably carried at least 30 to 40% of their strength. Han Fei asked, "Emperor Sparrow, where is the calamity? Why hasn't the calamity arrived yet?" Just at the moment when Han Fei asked this, suddenly the ground sank, the seabed collapsed, and a muddy color flew up. Around him, the void twisted and endless void vortexes appeared. Han Fei felt his vision go black, and when he opened his eyes again, there was nothing around him. There were no clones of the heavenly clan, no seawater, the air was dry, the earth was dry, and his perception couldn't spread out. Before Han Fei could react, the Emperor Sparrow automatically cancelled the fusion. The next moment, a voice appeared in Han Fei's mind, "I feel the aura of gods and divine beasts. I told you, you can't use the Eye of Calamity carelessly. Your position, the enemies you face, and the situation you are in determine the level of the calamity. This time, I'm afraid you've touched the gods." Han Fei. Chapter 2269. God! Divine Beast? Han Fei was speechless. He knew that a disaster had probably come, but he didn't know how it came or where he was. But when the Emperor Sparrow said the word God, he felt very insecure. And the divine beast, wasn't it the Emperor Sparrow's sworn enemy? And where were the 3 masters of the Sky Clan? And the countless clones? Where did they go? Not only were the clones of the masters of the Sky Clan gone, but Han Fei also found that the Blood Fiend was gone. He had no connection with it at all. This made his heart sink. The Blood Fiend was one of his super trump cards. If he lost it, it would be extremely difficult to get another one. Han Fei looked down. It was a wasteland. He should be on a hillside. Suddenly, Han Fei felt that the power he had taken away disappeared. This meant that either the enemy had broken free or those clones had died. But it was not the time to care about this. But now was not the time to care about this. He had to figure out what this place was. Han Fei walked all the way up to the hilltop. After a while, he saw that half of the hilltop was flat. The moment Han Fei saw the hilltop, he felt a chill in his heart. Without thinking, he took out the green thunder wine gourd and put it in front of him. He saw a dazzling knife light between heaven and earth, imprinted in his eyes, and the knife light chopped towards the mountain where he was. Unbeatable! The first thought in Han Fei's mind was that this blade was unbeatable and unstoppable. Although Han Fei saw the blade light with his naked eyes, he couldn't see its trajectory at all. Therefore, he summoned the green thunder wine gourd and put it in front of him. Clang bm! Han Fei felt that he had been hit by a star. Before he had time to think, he was smashed into the next hill like a shooting star. Rumble! The whole hill collapsed and Han Fei was smashed into the ground by the blade. Cough, cough! Han Fei spat out a mouthful of blood. He was injured after only one slash. His arms were bleeding. Fortunately, he wasn't killed. Han Fei let out a sigh of relief and looked at the green thunder wine gourd. As a result, he was astonished to discover that a crack had appeared on the green lightning wine gourd. Yes, there was a crack on the stomach of the gourd, and half of the gourd had been pierced through. Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. A dignified divine weapon was almost destroyed by a single slash. What would happen if it were to be slashed by a human body? However, just as he was about to retract his blood essence, he was shocked to discover that the blood essence he had sprayed out had disappeared. It had disappeared for no reason. Gurgle! Han Fei's eyes suddenly became sharp. He lowered his head to look at his hands and found that his upper arms were dripping with blood. They were flowing along his arms and were about to drill into the ground. F***ck. Heavenly Awakening Divine Art. Han Fei immediately performed the apocalyptic divine technique. He couldn't let his essence blood be stolen no matter what. Buzz! When the divine light descended, Han Fei's wounds healed rapidly. When he felt that he was in peak condition, he heaved a long sigh of relief. Looks like I can't get hurt in this damn place. Han Fei realized the danger here. He hadn't even found out who the enemy was. It seemed that the terrifying blade light came out of thin air. Breaking away from the collapsed ruins, Han Fei didn't move anymore. Instead, he sat quietly in the ruins. He was not in a hurry. As long as no one came to hit him now, it would be a good thing. No matter what, he had to get through this day first. As long as this day passed, the navigational panorama could be reset. If he couldn't figure out the direction, he would leave it to the navigational panorama. On the other side, the 3 powerhouses of the Heavenly Clan sensed the danger earlier than Han Fei. The moment Han Fei's battle power became abnormal, the leader of the Tian clan immediately dragged the other 2 people and retreated. He used void teleportation and forcefully teleported himself thousands of miles away. Elder E, what's wrong? Where did the power come from? Another person said, Oh no, I lost contact with my clone. The leader looked horrified. It's the aura of the god's ruins. Our clone and that kid have fallen into the god's ruins. How is it possible? The real god's ruins is still far away from here. How can there be the aura of the gods' ruins here? The leader said, I don't know. Maybe this battle was too fierce and triggered something we don't know. Look, the battlefield has completely fallen and is shrouded in gray fog. There's something wrong with the space there. As he said this, the leader felt a little uncomfortable, because in that place just now the spatial fluctuations were getting smaller and smaller, and everything began to slowly calm down. This meant that it would probably return to normal, but their clones were gone. This time, in order to capture Han Fei, even he had to use at least 30% of his divine soul power to create a clone. Now that the clone was missing, it was almost completely cut off from them. Once the clone was annihilated, it meant that the strength of the three of them would be greatly damaged, which was not something that could be easily recovered in thousands of years. It would probably take tens of thousands of years to recover the lost power. Otherwise, they would have to spend countless resources to recover it. However, they didn't dare to enter the gods' ruins, because they had already done it once, and the three of them had all returned with injuries. The power in the ruins was too terrifying, as if there were gods fighting. That was why their faces were so ugly now. Elder E, what should we do? This doppelganger of mine can be refined into a powerful outer body incarnation. If I die in the gods' ruins, the loss will be too great. Yes, it doesn't matter if that little thief dies. But you and my clone. The leader said, don't panic. After all, it's still our clone. It has great power, which is not comparable to that kid. We have entered the gods' ruins. Our clone will immediately realize it and give up chasing that kid, trying to find a way to return. Now that we have lost contact, it should be isolated by the gods' ruins. 6 hours later, Han Fei felt that the danger of this desperate situation might be half over. Unfortunately, he couldn't continue to use the 9-palace ruler of destiny. Today was still a desperate situation. Just when he was about to continue to sit cross-legged and get through the day, a dense phantom suddenly appeared in the void. When Han Fei took a closer look, it was a fist mark. Han Fei didn't know what to say. Where did the fist mark come from? The fist mark seemed to be wandering aimlessly in the void. When it met Han Fei, it seemed to find a target and bombarded straight at Han Fei. Damn it, how can this be? Han Fei didn't dare to neglect. When he saw the fist mark, he had already activated the Great Way with all his strength, and even used the invincible eyes and the law world. Because he knew that the fist was extremely terrifying and could not be easily blocked by him. Besides, even though Han Fei had used so much, he still raised the green thunder wine gourd. Anyway, it had already cracked, and he wouldn't change it to another divine weapon. Clang! Thud! The power of the punch punched through 6 mountains and blasted Han Fei into a ruin. Crack! The green thunder wine gourd made a crisp sound again. In the ruins, Han Fei was about to use the apocalyptic divine skill, but he didn't know if he touched something, but a footprint fell from the sky. On the other side, there was a roar, and Han Fei felt that his head was going to crack. F***ck, in the blink of an eye, Han Fei immediately tried to steal the power of the footprint and the demonic sound. However, when he performed the void stealing technique, he only felt that his body was about to swell to the point of exploding, because the power he stole was too strong. Puff! A mouthful of blood spurted out wildly, and Han Fei released this power at the risk of exploding his flesh and blood. Rumble! Han Fei didn't know how many mountains he had destroyed and how many mouthfuls of blood he had vomited. Anyway, he was hit by several forces and brought here. At this time, Han Fei realized that these forces didn't belong to the same path. It seemed that someone was fighting here. However, there was clearly no one here, which made Han Fei naturally think that this was just the remnant of the battle between the strong masters in the past. In this area, there were residual forces imprinted in the mountains, rivers, and earth. Once they were stimulated by external forces, they began to wreak havoc. To Han Fei's horror, even the remnant force was not something that he could resist. The green thunder wine gourd in his hand was now dented, which showed how terrifying the residual force here was. Apocalyptic divine technique. Han Fei continued to repair himself. He didn't know where the next attack would appear. He really wished that Xue Sha could be by his side now, so that he didn't have to do it himself. It's all the fault of those 3 bastards of the Heavenly Clan. If I have a chance in the future, I'll make sure that you won't even have your underwear left. Half a day later, a divine brilliance descended. Han Fei couldn't remember how many times he had used the apocalyptic divine technique. Anyway, he felt that the vitality he had obtained from the number 3 revival land might have been almost consumed by now. Hold on for another 4 hours. In another 4 hours, the navigator will be reset. At this moment, Han Fei didn't dare to forcibly use the navigator anymore. No matter how stupid Han Fei was, he could guess what this place was. Although he didn't know how he came to this god's ruin, he was here now. In this damn place, once he suffered the backlash of luck, the consequences would be terrible. Han Fei waited for more than 10 minutes and found that there was no outbreak of power. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, wondering if he had come to a safe place. He immediately sat cross-legged, ready to endure the last 4 hours. However, as soon as Han Fei sat down, he felt a voice calling in his heart. "Human, I see that your aptitude is excellent. We are destined to meet." Chapter 2270. The moment this figure appeared, Han Fei trembled all over and his nerves immediately tightened. What he hated the most was to hear people talking abruptly in such a strange place. Anyway, what he was pursuing now was that these people who sounded extremely deceptive, they were all liars. It couldn't be helped, there were too many swindlers in this world. If they didn't covet his body, then they coveted his soul. Now Han Fei was frightened when he heard this sentence. The Blood Fiend was just a powerhouse at the edge of the Tao-proving realm. However, this person couldn't be the remnant soul of a god as he thought. If it was really the remnant soul of a god, he could only count on his senior brother or the demon purification pot. Han Fei looked in the direction of the voice. There was a dazzling golden light over 3 mountains. There seemed to be some peerless treasure there. I'm not going. Han Fei thought to himself, anyway, I only need to hold on for another 2 hours. He was too close to the place where the golden light was emanating. He had to get away from it as soon as possible. At this moment, Han Fei no longer cared about being attacked by the residual power buried in this world. As long as he could get away from the golden light, it was worth it to be beaten 10 times. Swish! Han Fei had just run a few mountains when the voice sounded in his ear. Don't go. I can give you a big opportunity. As soon as Han Fei heard this, he immediately burst out faster than the speed of light. No, I have to run away as fast as I can. Unfortunately, as soon as Han Fei burst out faster than the speed of light, he saw a vague phantom appear in the air. The power of the great way he had just summoned dissipated in an instant, and he failed to burst out faster than the speed of light. F***CK. Senior God, I entered this place by mistake. I don't want an opportunity. I still have something important to do. Please don't chase after me. Human, come here. I mean you no harm. Han Fei was shocked. This must be a F***king living being. It could talk to him like this and could even summon a phantom. It must be the remnant soul of a god. Han Fei immediately said, Senior, I don't want any inheritance. I don't want any treasure. Oh, there are 3 super experts at the edge of Tao validation outside. They want everything. They are strong, their blood is fragrant, their bones are fresh, and there are many resources. Senior, open a path for me. I'll lure those 3 over right now and make them your dinner. Over the years, Han Fei had traveled far and wide and encountered all kinds of situations. The more they said they didn't have any evil intentions, the more their hearts were filled with malice. They couldn't wait to squeeze everything out of you. If she listened to him, then she must have lost her mind. However, although Han Fei thought so, The god's remnant soul was obviously not happy about it. The phantom suddenly moved. Han Fei saw half of the sky distort. The old voice said slowly, "Nebula Divine Waterfall." This was even stronger than the great Tao of space of the expert from the Tian clan. Han Fei could feel that layers of space had been sealed here. Han Fei immediately unleashed the Tao Convergence sword with all his strength. However, when his full force attack touched the so-called Nebula Divine Waterfall, dozens of ripples erupted. A transparent film was created, but it was quickly covered by the distorted space. His full-powered strike had already crumbled under this kind of power. Han Fei's face darkened. F***CK, what should I do? The Nebula Divine Waterfall was shrinking, forcing Han Fei to the place where the golden light was emitting. "Senior, let's talk." "Hey Senior, you're making things difficult for me." "Damn, why is it speeding up?" The Nebula Divine Waterfall twisted the void, and Han Fei felt that he was being sucked in. Han Fei felt that his power of the Great Tao was already unstable. The aura of the Great Tao produced in the Source Sea was dissipating into the Star Sea. Han Fei was shocked. It was too risky to force his way through at this time. If he was not careful, he would be crushed by the Nebula Divine Waterfall. Although he didn't want to go to the place where the golden light was emitting, he had to go at this moment. As the saying went, the weak couldn't defeat the strong. Han Fei retreated again and again. The deep valley behind him was shining with golden light. However, the closer he got to that damn place, the tighter his body became. Finally, when Han Fei was a certain distance away from the place where the golden light was shining, suddenly, before Han Fei could react, the void he was in was forcibly teleported. When Han Fei took a closer look, he was dumbfounded. He didn't know when he had appeared in this valley. At first glance, he saw a 3,000 zhang tall figure being nailed to the golden mist by 5 long spears that looked like towering jade pillars. However, to Han Fei's shock, although he could see the long spears and the golden light, he couldn't see anything. However, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't see what the golden light was that the long spears had pierced through. It was like a person standing in front of you, but you couldn't see his face or body at all. You could only see a golden light. This was a very weird feeling, even weirder than the God-scaring painting that he had once obtained. The God-scaring painting was just that he didn't have enough spiritual power to imprint that picture in his soul. And this huge figure, he clearly saw it, but his eyes and brain deceived him, saying that it was a golden light. Gudu, this was the first thing that shocked Han Fei. In addition to this, Han Fei also saw that there were nearly 1,000 people sitting here, 80% of which had become living mummies, with no spirituality in their bodies, their souls gone, and their flesh and blood dried up. Obviously, they had been dead for a long time, and the remaining nearly 200 people were still alive. However, some people's vitality had declined and their bodies were almost skin and bones, while some people just looked a little haggard. Han Fei even saw the clones of the 3 strong masters of the Heavenly Clan. Yes, although they had many clones, only 3 appeared here at the moment. It was probably that after entering here, their clones merged together. It was also possible that these 3 clones were the strongest, so they were forcibly teleported here together with him. When Han Fei arrived here, the 3 of them turned their heads and looked at Han Fei, their eyes full of anger and hatred. Han Fei immediately felt that it was unfair. "It was you who chased me and forced me to come here. Otherwise, why would I come to this damn place? Why are you blaming me now?" Han Fei immediately said, "What are you looking at? 3 old farts, I can't wait to get your real bodies here. Don't let me get out of here alive. Otherwise, I will keep my word and kill the people of the Heavenly Clan one day." Humph, at this time someone sneered. "Then you have to get out of here alive first. Once you come to this damn place, you can't leave. You can't go forward, you can't go back. Look, how many people have died." The one who spoke was a man very close to the golden light. They seemed to be trying to get close to the golden light. Oh no, to be precise, they were more like trying to get close to the pillar. Before Han Fei asked what they were doing, a voice appeared in Han Fei's mind. Human, I see that you are talented and have extraordinary luck. Break this seal, and I can give you 3 rare treasures and opportunities. Seeing this scene, Han Fei couldn't help but say, others can't get the rare treasures even if they die. Senior, I haven't turned into a star yet. Look at those 3. Their real bodies are in the origin realm. If you can find a way to get them here, you can definitely break the seal. While responding to the mysterious voice, Han Fei pointed at the clones of the 3 masters of the heavenly clan. The voice didn't respond to Han Fei but said, those who break the seal are not strong or weak, but whether they can understand the Tao or not. Human, I see that you have an excellent aptitude and are surrounded by luck. Work hard. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Excellent aptitude? Damn it. If I really had an excellent aptitude, how could you get so many masters here? Who are you kidding? However, Han Fei suddenly sensed something different from this mysterious voice. Because it wanted him to break the seal and understand the Tao. So, breaking the seal and understanding the Tao were the same thing? The golden light was nailed to the ground by 5 long spears. If he wanted to break the seal, he had to break the 5 long spears first. And if he wanted to break the 5 long spears, he might have to understand the Tao of this spear technique. Therefore, everyone was approaching the 5 long spear pillars in order to visualize and understand the true meaning of this spear. Han Fei immediately thought of something. This didn't seem to be a problem for him. With the demon purification pot, it was only a matter of time for him to see through this technique. Even if the demon purification pot didn't work, he could still understand the Tao of this spear through the jade stone bridge. But the problem was, even if he could understand this Tao, who knew if he would really let go of this golden light? Also, there were more than 200 living people and more than 800 corpses here. Obviously, a lot of their power had been extracted. Even Han Fei felt that his vitality and power were fading away. This golden light had already killed more than 800 people. How could he kill 200 more? Did he mean what he said? Han Fei pointed at the clones of the 3 heavenly clans. The 3 of them looked at him unkindly and seemed to want to try to fight here. However, someone immediately reminded, people of the heavenly clans, if you want to live a little longer, don't attack. The leader of the heavenly clans said, no fighting here? The man said, you can fight, but your power will be absorbed by the golden light in an instant. You can't hit anyone at all. Someone said, no matter how you make enemies outside here, you'd better think about how to break this seal first. Everyone, life and death are on the line. Breaking the seal is the only way to survive. Otherwise, with the loss of energy, you and I will be exhausted sooner or later. Han Fei didn't intend to fight, but when he saw so many people sitting cross-legged, he was no longer worried that the 3 old thieves would attack. The heavenly clansman narrowed his eyes and said, it can absorb our power in an instant. Is it an Emperor Realm Master? This time, there was no need for others to answer him. Everyone heard an old voice reverberating in the void, I am God. Chapter 2271. This sentence, in the ears of Han Fei and the 3 powerhouses of the Tian clan, was like a clap of thunder. It was absurd and horrifying. Gods, weren't they extinct? Now, a guy suddenly appeared and claimed to be a god. However, Han Fei somewhat believed that because his body was nailed to death, he still had the strength to trap so many people here. And he could even bring himself and the 3 powerhouses of the Tian clan here from a long distance away. This was simply unreasonable. Han Fei felt that if it weren't for the Eye of Disaster, perhaps this kind of unreasonable thing wouldn't have happened at all. Except for Han Fei and the clones of the 3 powerhouses of the Tian clan, the others didn't have any special reaction to this. Obviously, they already knew that this ball of golden light claimed to be a god. Han Fei immediately calmed down. Whether this ball of golden light was a god or not, Since it could trap so many powerhouses at once, it definitely couldn't be a simple character. At a glance, Han Fei could tell that these people were all heaven-opening realm powerhouses. Those who had died were probably also heaven-opening realm powerhouses. In total, more than 800 heaven-opening realm powerhouses had died here. Han Fei guessed that even if this ball of golden light was really a god, it was definitely not a good god. A dignified god was actually absorbing the heaven-opening realm powerhouses who were like ants in his eyes. Wasn't this bullying? How could a proper god do such a thing? At this time, Han Fei temporarily put aside the grievances between him and the 3 powerhouses of the Tian clan. He also looked at the 5 spear pillars. The spear pillar was engraved with strange Tao patterns, emitting a faint grayish-red mist. The pillar was about 100 feet high and as thick as 2 people holding hands. The tip of the spear was nailed in the golden light and couldn't be seen at all. What everyone could visualize was the body of this spear pillar. Han Fei's eyes fell on the Tao patterns on the pillar. For a moment, his mind seemed to be attracted. In a trance, Han Fei seemed to see a long spear in the air. The spear body was crimson, and then there seemed to be Tao patterns imprinted on the spear body from the outside. Tao pattern imprint? This spear pillar seemed to be able to attract Han Fei's mind. For a moment, he forgot where he was and many doubts appeared in his mind. This was the first time he had visualized and seen the birth of a Tao pattern. It was also the first time he had seen the birth of a Tao pattern. He had originally thought that Tao patterns were a kind of line pattern that was invented by someone, and it was mostly used to engrave arrays and so on. But when he saw the Tao pattern on the spear, his heart skipped a beat. Were Tao patterns artificially created? When Han Fei first came into contact with Tao patterns, he felt that they were a bit strange. The lines of the Tao patterns were a bit complicated, and some were simple, but there was no pattern at all. Later on, in the record of myriad Tao patterns, the heavenly Tao patterns were compiled into a book, dissecting its usage and studying its natural operation. Finally, the heavenly Tao pattern's usage was deduced. To elaborate, the Tao pattern itself was meaningless. Once it entered the formation, the myriad Taos would become impermanent, and it could connect with the gods. Han Fei didn't cultivate arrays for a long time, but later he became a grandmaster of arrays. Almost no one could compare with him, because he had learned the usage of Taoist patterns in the record of myriad Tao patterns. By disassembling Taoist patterns and integrating them into arrays, he could make arrays several times stronger. But today, Han Fei suddenly had another idea. Was there really a need to memorize Tao patterns? The record of myriad Tao patterns classified, compiled, and disassembled Tao patterns. But from what Han Fei saw just now, the Tao pattern seemed to be born naturally, and it didn't seem to need to be deliberately engraved and disassembled. It was more like you needed it, and then the world understood your intention, so it attached a layer of Tao pattern to your great technique. Interesting. It turns out that this Tao pattern can be used in this way? To let the heavenly Tao form Tao patterns spontaneously. As if he had understood something, Han Fei suddenly came back to his senses, only to feel a fire in his heart. Then, Han Fei's face couldn't help changing. During this moment of trance, he felt that 30% of his qi and blood had disappeared for no reason. He was now a powerhouse in the heaven-opening state. How many resources would it take to make up for 30% of his qi and blood? Before Han Fei continued to think about how the Tao pattern should be born, he suddenly sensed a kind of sad aura. When Han Fei turned his head, he saw that a powerhouse close to the spear had dried up. His vitality was dissipating at a speed visible to the naked eye, and his Tao was annihilated. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. He could feel that person's sadness. As a powerhouse, it was not that he couldn't die, but who would be willing to die inexplicably like this? F***ck your god. Suddenly, he heard someone roaring on the other side. Han Fei looked over, only to see that it was a half-dead powerhouse in the heaven-opening state. He seemed to know that he was about to die, so he directly burned the remaining flesh and blood in his body, and burned his divine soul, bursting out a brilliant blow, trying to penetrate the golden light. Han Fei clearly saw that this person's attack was full of the aura in the spear. It could be seen that this person had probably also comprehended a lot of the Tao that suppressed this god, so he could launch such a terrifying blow. Han Fei estimated that the power of this blow was actually comparable to his own Tao convergence sword. If he resisted it head-on, he might be injured. This person's attack was destined to fail. His peak blow was directly shattered into starlight the moment it entered the golden light. This person's body was annihilated in midair, and there was no possibility for him to be reborn. All of a sudden, two powerhouses in the heaven-opening state died one after another, which made Han Fei realize the danger of this so-called god. Han Fei hurriedly used the resources in the Origin Sea to make up for his lost vitality and returned to his peak state. Then, he began to comprehend the new technique that emerged in his mind. Tao Fusion Book, Incomplete, Introduction. There are rules in heaven and earth that can define all laws, give birth to Tao, and bear all living beings. The origin of everything in the world ultimately belongs to heaven and earth. Cultivators who compete with heaven for the Tao are rebellious. Merging with the Tao of the heavens was a blessing to heaven and earth. Merging with heaven can bear the will of heaven, control the patterns of the heavenly Tao, and summon all kinds of laws. Comprehension. 37% note. Merging with the Tao doesn't mean returning to heaven. The strong borrow the power of heaven. Han Fei was thrilled. It was true that the demon purification pot was omnipotent. After only one visualization, it had already comprehended 137% of the Tao patterns. At this speed, it wouldn't be long before he fully comprehended this thing. Once he fully grasped the Tao Fusion Book, he might have a way to break this seal. Of course, it was still too early to break the seal. So, Han Fei remained as still as a mountain and continued to visualize. About 3 months later, Han Fei was woken up by the collapse of the heavenly Tao. Of course, while Han Fei was immersed in the visualization, someone else had died. However, this time, Han Fei found that his vitality only decreased by more than 20%. It must be because the visualization time was not as long as the first time. When he looked at the Tao Fusion Book again, his comprehension rate was 43%. This surprised Han Fei. This shouldn't be the case. Why did his comprehension speed slow down? Could it be that the more he comprehended, the more profound it would be? Han Fei looked at the three powerhouses. Although they were clones, they were much stronger than him in terms of strength and realm. Therefore, the amount of vitality they had consumed so far should not be too much. Han Fei saw someone slightly sighing not far away. He couldn't help but ask, "Senior, may I ask how long I've been here? I feel that I've only visualized twice, and several seniors have already died. Don't tell me we've spent decades on one visualization?" The man glanced at Han Fei and shook his head slightly. "It didn't take that long. You've only been here for more than half a year. The reason why they died was because they had been trapped here for too long. Their resources had dried up, and they had no way to replenish themselves. Why else would they not die?" Hearing that it had only been more than half a year, Han Fei secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It was a good thing, as long as it didn't take decades. However, Han Fei wasn't optimistic now, because before this, he had exhausted 80% of his resources in order to survive the heavenly lightning baptism. The rest were just some ordinary resources. Even if they could be used to restore his vitality, they wouldn't last long. Everyone needed different amounts of resources to restore their vitality to its peak. Han Fei's physique was extremely strong. If he wanted to restore his vitality, he would consume a lot of resources. Therefore, he didn't dare to take it lightly. No matter what, he had to fully comprehend the Tao Fusion Book first. 3 years later. This was the 15th time Han Fei had visualized. In the past 3 years, he had witnessed the death of more than a dozen heaven-opening state powerhouses, and there were also 3 new heaven-opening state powerhouses. Of course, they also came to search for treasures, but they were trapped here. This time, Han Fei was in the state of visualization. The picture that emerged in his mind was that of himself standing between heaven and earth, as if his body had been integrated with heaven and earth. As Han Fei gently waved his hand, the wind, thunder, and rain moved. At that moment, Han Fei only felt that there was a cluster of residual strange power in his body, spreading out. Han Fei recognized this power. It was the power of the 4th divine elixir on the small vine in the demon purification pot. I haven't been able to refine the 4th divine elixir yet? Han Fei didn't know about this. He thought he had completely refined the 4th elixir, but it turned out that he hadn't. Until now, there was still the residual power of this divine elixir in his body. Relying on the 4th divine elixir, Han Fei had already partially fused the Tao Fusion book. Because the power of this divine elixir was to ride the clouds, control the stars, suppress the sea, summon the clouds, rain, and thunder, and absorb the spiritual aura of the earth. At this moment, maybe because he had really comprehended the Tao Fusion book and the origin of the Tao patterns in the world, this part of the power appeared and dissipated in his body. Han Fei felt that his sea of origin was shaking, and his Tao paths suddenly connected with the sea of stars and seemed to be merging with the heavenly Tao. Human, you've actually comprehended the Tao patterns. I was right about you. You're a man of great luck. You're worthy of me bringing you here from billions of miles away. At that moment, Han Fei knew that he had completely comprehended the Tao Fusion book. Then, he activated the remaining power of the 4th elixir, and the Sea of Origin began to spontaneously fuse with the Tao Fusion book. Of course, this couldn't be hidden from the god, so he immediately communicated with Han Fei. Chapter 2272. Han Fei said, "Senior, if you want me to help you break the seal, why don't you remove the barrier so that I can communicate with the Origin Sea and become one with the sky first? Since you've already understood it, you'll be able to completely integrate with the heavenly way in a few years at most. By then, you'll be able to create Taoist patterns without having to communicate with the Origin Sea." Han Fei's heart sank. This son of AB*TCH was suppressing everyone and not giving them a chance to enter the Origin Sea. Once they entered the Origin Sea, they would have a chance to escape from the universe. However, this also confirmed Han Fei's other guess, which was that this so-called god was afraid that they would run away. However, if this guy was a real god, with the power of a god, not to mention escaping from the universe, even if they did escape into the universe, he could easily catch them and bring them back. Wait, something's wrong. Han Fei frowned. This guy was definitely not as strong as he thought. Even if he was really a god, his strength should have fallen to the bottom, because he couldn't even control this universe. How could he be a god? Han Fei couldn't help but guess that if this guy was not a god and could suppress so many people, his strength was probably only at the level of an emperor. However, even if this guy only had the strength of an emperor, he was still not someone that Han Fei could compete with. Before figuring out the strength of this god, Han Fei certainly wouldn't do anything irrational rashly. After a moment, when Han Fei slowly opened his eyes, the message that he had fully comprehended the Tao Fusion book appeared in his head. He could feel some changes in the Origin Sea, but he didn't know exactly how big the changes were. He wouldn't know until the abnormal changes in the Origin Sea disappeared. About half a year later, Han Fei sensed that the abnormal changes in the Origin Sea seemed to have gradually subsided, so he looked at his information. Owner Han Fei level greater than 101, sky opening, sea family tree 200016, chaotic energy 660, 000 spiritual power 5562698, perception range 6. 5 million kilometers, power 521, 4649 waves, first spiritual heritage, primordial vein, second spiritual heritage, vein of eternal darkness, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 99, second spiritual beast emperor sparrow, level 100, main art, void stealing, level 9 of void fishing, emperor ultra quality. Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. Both his spiritual power and strength had been inexplicably enhanced. His divine soul power did not increase by much, only about 100,000 points. But the power was increased by 200,000 waves, which really shocked Han Fei. He knew that the integration of Tao with heaven would strengthen the Tao of equilibrium, but he did not expect the integration of Tao to increase his strength by a small margin. Also, Han Fei had a hunch that he seemed to be able to borrow more power from the heavenly way, but he didn't know exactly how much combat power he could unleash. But no matter what, this was a major breakthrough. Apart from the growth of his strength, Han Fei also sensed that the demon purification pot seemed to be slightly shaking. In his head, Han Fei could see that the fifth divine pill on one of the vines in the demon purification pot was half red and showing signs of ripening. The fifth pill is about to mature? Han Fei's heart surged. He didn't know how long he had been cultivating this fifth pill. He had poured countless resources into it, but it was still not mature. But now it was showing signs of maturing. This meant that it wouldn't be long before it matured. Is it because I haven't fully digested the fourth divine pill, so the fifth pill refuses to mature? Han Fei thought it was very likely. Even he himself, if he hadn't comprehended the integration of Tao just now, wouldn't have known that there was still part of the fourth divine pill that he hadn't digested. It seemed that this crisis had some benefits after all. Although he was still trapped, there were two joyous events today. It was great news. Feeling that he had lost more than 40% of his vitality, Han Fei was speechless. A large amount of resources in the origin sea collapsed to replenish his vitality. The joy that Han Fei had just gained was suddenly gone. This fish *T God was too disgusting. It was absorbing his vitality and energy all the time. If it continued like this, in a few years, the resources in his origin sea would not be enough. Han Fei hurriedly cast aside all other thoughts and started to observe the 5 spear pillars again. He had already comprehended the Tao pattern. When he looked at the spear pillars again, what he saw was no longer the scene of the Tao pattern appearing on the body of the spear. This time, what Han Fei saw was a ball of inexplicable light, projecting such a spear. This spear seemed to burst out from the stars. As it fell, it attracted the rules of the great path of heaven and earth, absorbing infinite power and complicated Tao patterns. The spear light was like a falling star, and the sky seemed to be collapsing and the earth was cracking. In an instant, the spear pierced through a ball of golden light and nailed it to the ground. At the moment when the spear light pierced down, Han Fei only felt a sharp pain in his eyes. Just witnessing the power of the spear, his eyes almost couldn't bear it. If he weren't a body cultivator, his eyes might have exploded at this moment. So powerful! What a powerful spear! Han Fei felt that if Zhang Xuanyu were here, he would be ecstatic. He, who specialized in spear arts, might be able to comprehend a variety of spear arts after witnessing such a terrifying spear. However, he didn't have a multidimensional brain like Zhang Xuanyu's, so he couldn't evolve combat skills from countless angles in his mind. Wait! Suddenly, Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Zhang Xuanyu had his own advantages, but at the heaven-opening realm, what couldn't he imitate? Just like the 3 strong masters of the heavenly clan split their clones to deal with him, his void descent could create countless more clones than them. As long as he was willing, as long as the clones were lower than his own level, he could also summon clones of any strength. If he used clones to fight with clones or when cultivating, he could create thousands of projections. Wouldn't it be faster for him to explore alone? Suddenly, Han Fei found that he seemed to have overlooked something. The void fishing art, from beginning to end, had 9 levels, and every level was useful. Han Fei thought the void descent was useless. But now that he thought about it, it didn't seem right. Both the sea-opening realm and the heaven-opening realm could split into many clones. So what were the advantages and disadvantages of the void descent and creating his own clones? Because he rarely needed to create clones, Han Fei rarely used the void descent. But now that he thought about it, it didn't seem right. Since the descending from the void was a great technique, there was definitely a fundamental difference between it and an ordinary clone. Unfortunately, this place was not suitable for studying the void descent. But Han Fei kept this matter in mind. In addition to the void descent that suddenly occurred to him, because he observed the way this spear was launched, this spear technique immediately appeared in Han Fei's mind. God Sealing Spear, Unrated, Introduction. This technique comes from the God's Spear, a god-sealing technique evolved from the combat skills of the gods. Strong masters often use everything in the world to condense them into techniques, brand them with heaven and earth Tao patterns, and endow them with the power of God sealing. This technique can seal the body and suppress the soul. Once sealed by this technique, the Tao pattern brand in the God sealing technique must be broken to get rid of it. Of course, those with greater power and more ancient corrosion can also break the seal. Comprehension: 7% deduction, not deductible effect. The orthodox God sealing technique is incomparable to miscellaneous seals. Disadvantage: to comprehend this technique, one must integrate the Tao with the sky and master the Tao patterns. Remarks: this spear technique, combined with different Tao patterns, can launch different attacks. Sealing technique? This was the first time that Han Fei had seen a special sealing technique, and Han Fei had naturally mastered a lot of sealing technique. But the essence of sealing techniques was power suppression. Generally, when using sealing techniques, they were mostly suppressed by arrays. After leaving the array, Han Fei really didn't see any sealing methods. Barriers were different from seals. Barriers relied on the power of something or a place to spontaneously operate the protective power of those things. As for the formation seal, it required a great battle, allowing the power of heaven and earth to flow within the formation seal. The God sealing spear was even more direct. It took the essence of heaven and earth and branded it with heaven and earth Tao patterns. This Tao pattern could be combined in countless ways. God knew what Tao patterns that person had engraved on this spear when he used the God sealing spear. But fortunately, he had both mastered the God sealing spear and understood the Tao patterns. When the God sealing spear was completely comprehended, the Tao patterns on the spear could be manifested. As long as the Tao patterns manifested, there would naturally be a way to crack it. In Han Fei's mind, many thoughts flashed in an instant, and he couldn't help but put on an imperceptible smile. After taking a break and replenishing his qi and blood, Han Fei continued to study the spear. Another 2.5 years passed, almost 3 years. After experiencing the feeling that his eyes were about to explode for nearly 20 times, Han Fei finally completely comprehended the God sealing spear. However, Han Fei didn't immediately lift the seal. This golden light actually didn't care about these strong masters here at all. They were all just tools that came to be captured by it to lift the seal. However, this God sealing technique was a great sealing technique without the means of the gods. Even if all the people here were emperors, how many of them could comprehend the means of the gods? Even if some people could comprehend it, they would often be sucked to death by it before they finished comprehending it. They deserved to be trapped here. After thinking for a while, Han Fei suddenly got up and walked towards the spear. Suddenly, many people looked sideways at Han Fei. They wondered what this man was going to do. Chapter 2273. Thousands of people sat cross-legged in the valley, most of them dead. Only a small number of people approached the spear pillar. Besides, those who could approach the spear pillar were very powerful. Otherwise, they would be injured by the spear radiant. And Han Fei had been here for almost 6 years. He hadn't moved or approached the spear pillar for such a long time. Most people thought that Han Fei wasn't very strong. At this moment, Han Fei got up and walked to the spear pillar, which was actually a very strange behavior. Because most people would choose the position where they could stand the moment they were detained to observe the Tao patterns on the spear pillar and the spear radiance around it. In terms of comprehension, the closer one was, the better the effect would be. Who would wait 6 years before approaching the spear pillar? Did they think they were cultivating? Even the 3 elders of the Tian clan looked at Han Fei. Ignoring these people's gazes, Han Fei leaped and crossed 100 kilometers in a flash. Hiss, many people gasped. This valley was very large. It existed to suppress a god. If it was too small, it probably wouldn't be enough. But this was only more than 1,200 kilometers. Han Fei's original position was about 800 kilometers. He had crossed so much in just 2 steps. Did he really think this was a trial? Han Fei didn't stop. 700 kilometers. 600 kilometers. When Han Fei crossed 300 kilometers, someone woke up from the visualization and stared at Han Fei. Many people couldn't help but become nervous. Someone swallowed. Is he going to break the seal? He's only been here for 6 years. How can he comprehend the seal so quickly? Can he break the seal? Such a terrifying spear radiance is completely unaffected by him. He must have comprehended this spear technique. For a moment, the crowd was in an uproar. Only the clone of the Tian clan cultivator looked serious. When they fought with Han Fei, they knew how terrifying this boy was. A person who hadn't even reached the star transformation realm could escape from 3 late-stage star transformation realm cultivators. This kind of strength was rare in the world. It wasn't that there weren't people like this in the world, but there were very few of them. In the entire East Sea Divine Prefecture, the number of people who could do this could be counted on 2 hands. Those who could reach this level of strength were all people with great willpower. Their origin seas were different from ordinary people's. As for the specific reason, others did not know. Right now, their Tian clan had already formed a deep grudge with Han Fei. Today, if Han Fei could break the seal and not die, he would definitely become a great threat to the Tian clan in the future. If he was an ordinary person, they wouldn't be afraid, but could Han Fei treat him as an ordinary person? In their eyes, this guy had a chance to prove his Tao. Proving the way represented the position of a venerable emperor. In the sea realm, which venerable emperor wasn't powerful enough to make others fear him. Even the Tian tribe had to be careful of the revenge of a venerable sovereign, right? However, when Han Fei stepped directly within 100 kilometers of a spear pillar, their hearts sank, knowing that Han Fei must have comprehended something. Whoosh! All of a sudden, many strong masters stood up with eager eyes. They couldn't wait for Han Fei to break the seal. Even the sealed god was surprised. Human, you've comprehended it? Han Fei slowed down. Regardless of the sharp spear radiance, there seemed to be a slight burst of power around him. It was a very strong spear intent. Someone finally exclaimed, "He has comprehended it! He has comprehended it!" Finally, someone can comprehend these spear techniques. Someone clenched his fists and shouted, "Brother, although I don't know your name, the lives of hundreds of us are in your hands. If you save us, we will all owe you a favor that will cost our lives." Many people couldn't help but echo, "Brother, if we can get out this time, regardless of the favor, we can offer all our resources to you, and we will repay the favor separately." Someone shouted, "That's right, resources are nothing for saving our lives. As long as you can break this seal, if we don't repay such a great favor, we will have inner demons, and it will be difficult for us to make any progress in this life." Hearing this, Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. Good heavens, this guy was even more ruthless than the last one. Although he wanted these people's resources very much, these people were too proactive. It was a lie that it was difficult for them to make any progress, but it was true that they would encounter inner demons. But in fact, how many emperors could reach the Tao-proving realm? Now they were bragging to him, but it was hard to say whether they could reach the edge of the Tao-proving realm. Besides, who told them that he was ready to break the seal now? Han Fei still ignored these people, and chose to respond to the god. Han Fei said, "Senior, I have comprehended it, but I haven't comprehended it yet. You should know in your heart that in order to break this seal, one needs to completely integrate the great Tao, completely comprehend the heavenly Tao, and be able to control the power between heaven and earth at will and turn it into Tao patterns. The other needs to comprehend the spear intent of this spear radiance, and combine the two to break this seal. I wonder if what Junior said is correct?" The god did not deny it and confirmed Han Fei's words. "Yes. Is that true?" Han Fei said, "The reason why I can come here now is mainly that I am an array master. I obtained a record of Tao patterns before, but unfortunately, the record of Tao patterns in the book is not detailed. Fortunately, I have been practicing every day so I can understand the Tao patterns on the pillars a little. However, I haven't comprehended enough yet, so I can't control the Tao of heaven and earth at will and turn it into Tao patterns. But now I can visualize this spear pillar again, and I can barely visualize the meaning of the spear. However, I'm still far from breaking the seal." The unknown god asked, "Then what do you want to do now?" Han Fei didn't speak, but directly stepped about 10 miles away from the spear pillar. His eyes were stinging because he couldn't look directly at the sealed creature. He could only see a golden light. Therefore, Han Fei leaped up, facing the infinite spear intent, and directly stood on the top of the spear pillar. At this time, Han Fei said, "Senior God, do you need some help to break this seal?" The god seemed to see the hope of breaking the seal, so he didn't try to bluff anymore. He couldn't help but ask, "What help do you need?" Han Fei said, "I need to become stronger and integrate with the Tao. Only when the great Tao is completely integrated with heaven can I comprehend the heavenly Tao." The god's voice was leisurely. 3 years ago, I saw a large amount of Tao flowing into your source star. Under such circumstances, how could you not integrate with the Tao? Han Fei was overjoyed. This great hoodwinker really wasn't sure if he had completed the integration of the great Tao. Han Fei said, "Senior, I have many Taos at the same time. 3 years ago, I only integrated one Tao. After that, Han Fei used the great Tao of gravity, then transformed it into the great Tao of space, and then into the great Tao of yin and yang." Han Fei said, "Senior, look, I'm also in a difficult situation. Now I can only help you when I grow stronger. Senior, you should have seen that I haven't turned into a star yet. I haven't even finished turning into a star. In my source sea, even if the great Tao is completely integrated with the heavenly Tao, it shouldn't be complete, right? Senior, if you can help me turn into a star." At this point, Han Fei didn't try to hide his intentions anymore. "You want me to work for you, but you don't want to give me candy. How can there be such a good thing in this world?" Sure enough, the god pondered for a moment and responded, "How many origin sea have you expanded?" Han Fei said, "Senior, my origin sea has been expanded 270,000 kilometers. The god said, "Then I will help you expand 300,000 kilometers of origin sea and then turn into a star." Han Fei immediately said, "Senior, I'm a genius. How can I only expand 300,000 kilometers of origin sea? In that case, after I turn into a star, I can only expand 600,000 kilometers. How can I be considered a genius? At that time, because turning into a star will limit my aptitude, I won't be able to integrate with the heavenly Tao. What should I do then?" Han Fei said with grievance, but this was a test to see if this creature would get mad. Han Fei bet that it wouldn't, because he was the one with the greatest hope of breaking the seal. Sure enough, the god said, "Turning into a star is not the core of the heaven-opening realm, but the path after turning into a star. Human, I see your luck and talent. Your ambition is not to turn into a star." Han Fei sneered in his heart, but his face was perturbed. Senior God, I've heard that turning into a star should only be done when you feel it, right? It's like transcending a heavenly tribulation. When the heavenly tribulation arrives, you can naturally feel it. The god was obviously silent for a while. He didn't expect that Han Fei, who hadn't turned into a star, would know this. Besides, this secret was actually known by very few people. At least, it was almost impossible for most casual cultivators to know this secret, because the opportunity to turn into a star was very difficult to grasp. Most people just wanted to turn into a star when they had that opportunity, but they didn't have a clear thought to tell them that they could turn into a star. At this time, in order to continue to portray his dignity as a god, the god said, "Mortals are ignorant and fall into the stereotype. They all think that turning into a star carries the miracle of proving the Tao and becoming a god. Little do they know that this is just their misconception." Han Fei cursed in his heart. F***ck your misconception. This is what my senior brother Azure Dragon said. And it was affirmed by eldest senior brother. If senior brother Azure Dragon said something wrong, why didn't eldest senior brother remind him? Originally, Han Fei hoped that he could be honest with him, but now it seemed that he didn't need to think about it anymore. He was just an old silver coin. Han Fei immediately pretended to be shocked. Is that so? Turns out that the world is wrong. The god seemed to have relaxed a lot and continued, "Of course, the world is so ignorant. You are a hero, so you should understand it." Han Fei said, "Senior God, please grant me resources. I'm going to open up the Sea of Origin and turn into a star." The god paused for a moment but then said, "I will grant you 50,000 kilometers of resources first, and when you start to turn into a star, I will grant you more. Otherwise, if you turn into a star too fast, your potential will be affected if you don't have any guidance." Han Fei sneered in his heart, not believing a word of this nonsense. But on the surface, he cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Senior God." Suddenly, Han Fei said, "Senior God, since I have already broken the array, should I let these people go? Their vitality is fading rapidly. If I don't let them go, I'm afraid that when I turn into a star and all the great Daos are integrated into the sky, nearly half of these people will die, right?" The god said in an old voice, "I sealed this place as an array. It can only imprison people, but it can't let them go. Only when I break the seal can I break the array." Han Fei's smile grew brighter in his heart. He instantly understood that the old silver coin was afraid. The reason why he kept these people here was that he was afraid that they would go out and find an emperor-level or even stronger master. This showed that this so-called god was not as strong as he thought. How could there be any gods in the sea realm now? What he was afraid of was an emperor, and even an emperor could make this so-called god afraid, which meant that his strength was much weaker than he thought. Suddenly, Han Fei calmed down. "If I don't skin you alive, I'll feel sorry for the vitality I lost." Chapter 2274. Of course, the deal between the god and Han Fei wouldn't be seen by others, which would make his identity as a god seem worthless. Therefore, when Han Fei jumped to the top of the spear pillar, a flash of golden light obscured everyone's sight. But Han Fei's voice could still be heard. He said, "Everyone, although I can break this seal, it won't be that fast. It may take 10 years or 100 years. I'm not sure." 10 years? 100 years? Some of the people who were still alive secretly breathed a sigh of relief, while others looked nervous. Yes, even if this person was a genius and could avoid the spear aura in this place within 6 years, this was a seal that suppressed gods. How could it be broken so easily? However, some people's resources couldn't wait until then. Suddenly, someone hurriedly said, "Fellow Taoists, my resources are exhausted. If anyone is willing to share some resources with me, I will give you a great technique and an ultra-quality sea-quelling bizarre treasure." For a moment, everyone was excited. Although Han Fei couldn't directly break the seal, he gave them hope. For a time, the emperors were rejuvenated. They felt that as long as they were willing to pay, they could always hold on for 100 years. Han Fei naturally wouldn't pay attention to this. In fact, the lives of these people had nothing to do with him. In the wilderness, there was no good or bad people. They could wait if they wanted to. Now, it was a game between himself and this so-called god, and he didn't have the mood to care about them. Han Fei sat cross-legged on the pillar, and a small round ball appeared in front of Han Fei. Han Fei recognized that it was a small world. This thing could be integrated into the Origin Sea and had the magical effect of consolidating the Origin Sea. But this small world was obviously not big, because this god only said that he would give Han Fei 50,000 kilometers of resources. The 50,000 kilometers of resources were naturally the 50,000 kilometers after 270,000 kilometers. For Han Fei, this was already a very considerable amount of resources. After all, killing a strong master like in Taiping and Qiu Shotsang couldn't get so many resources. After all, the further he went, the more terrifying the increase in the number of resources would be. Han Fei estimated that this 50,000 kilometers was at least the wealth of a late-stage celestial transformation realm powerhouse. Han Fei guided this small world into the Origin Sea, only to feel the small world explode in the Origin Sea. As he thought about it, Han Fei felt the value of this resource. Many treasures and minerals were gathered in it. Developing the Origin Sea was a long-term process. Since this god couldn't see through Han Fei's Origin Sea, it naturally couldn't see through the acceleration of time in Han Fei's Origin Sea. Even though Han Fei deliberately pretended to open up the Origin Sea for cultivation, a year later, the resources in Han Fei's body had been used up, and the Origin Sea had naturally expanded to 320,000 kilometers. This breakthrough slightly improved Han Fei's overall strength again. His strength increased by hundreds of thousands again, and the power of his soul also increased slightly. The natural growth of strength brought by the opening of the Origin Sea was quite stable, so Han Fei hoped that this god could give him another 100,000 kilometers of resources, so that his soul power and physical strength might break through the 6 million mark. In fact, there might even be a balance between the two. 1 year later, Han Fei slowly opened his eyes, as if he had just woken up from cultivation. He was a little puzzled. Logically speaking, when his Origin Sea expanded to 300,000 kilometers, he had already been waiting for this so-called god to ask questions. With the means of this god, he must be able to observe the star sea and detect the changes in his Origin Sea. Even if his Origin Sea hadn't turned into a star yet, the opening of 50,000 kilometers of space shouldn't be hidden from this guy. However, this god didn't say anything, which made Han Fei feel puzzled. "Senior God, are you there?" The old voice, which seemed to have traveled through centuries, fell into Han Fei's ears. "You haven't tried to turn into a star." This sentence expressed the god's understanding of whether Han Fei had turned into a star or not. Han Fei said with a smile, "You may not believe it, but after my Origin Sea expanded to 300,000 kilometers, I suddenly had an epiphany. If my Origin Sea could reach 400,000 kilometers, it might be a great opportunity to turn into a star." At this time, Han Fei seemed to have completely forgotten the truth that this god said before. After pondering for a moment, the so-called god finally said, "You are indeed deceiving me. You have actually comprehended the way to use the heaven and earth Tao patterns and the way to crack this spearlight. Human, do you know the consequences of deceiving a god?" Han Fei chuckled. "Oh, Senior, are you kidding me? I'm timid and can't stand it. I was so scared by you that I suddenly forgot the way to crack the seal." The god moaned for a moment. "Human, what do you want?" Han Fei smiled and said, "Senior, why don't you open up another 500,000 kilometers of resources for me? I'll definitely remember it." At that moment, Han Fei seemed to feel some kind of anger, but he didn't care. It was only a matter of time before he fell out with this god. When he used the 50,000 kilometers of resources unscrupulously, he was already ready to fall out with this god. The god shouted, "Human! I predicted your extraordinary luck, so I brought you here. I can bring you here, but I can also destroy you." Han Fei sneered. "Oh, really? Senior, you want to destroy me now? This is simply too disappointing for this junior." As he spoke, Han Fei's energy soared, and his strength burst out. With a wave of his hand, rare treasures condensed into a spear, engraved with the heaven and earth Tao patterns. "What are you doing?" This time, the god was horrified. He didn't expect that Han Fei would dare to attack him directly. He didn't expect that after tricking him, this person still wanted to seal him? Originally, because he had already broken some seals, he could exert some power. If he was forced to be sealed again, how could he survive? "Stop! Human, stop!" Han Fei's sudden outburst woke up the emperors from their visualization. They looked at the terrifying spear condensed in the void and couldn't help but widen their eyes. Someone exclaimed, "Is this the spear light that seals this place? What's going on? Is that fellow Taoist going to break the seal?" He really comprehended it. He can actually cast such a spear light. In the next second, a golden light burst out, directly blocking everyone's sight. In the golden light, the so-called god shouted, "Human, you haven't even turned into a star yet. Who gave you the courage to attack a god?" Clang! At this moment, the spear light pierced down, and the god continued, "Human, do you think anyone can seal me? It's a piece of cake for me to suppress you." "A piece of cake? Then why don't you do it?" Han Fei sneered, and with a thought, a strange force between heaven and earth directly added some kind of power to his body. For a moment, Han Fei's body was shining with golden light. Puff! It turned out that the golden light that was supposed to be indestructible was taken away by Han Fei in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Han Fei only felt that his body was carrying a terrifying power. This power made it a little difficult for him to move, and he felt stiff all over as if petrified. A terrifying pressure crushed on Han Fei. This was the attack of the god. However, how could he know that Han Fei had directly deprived him of his defense? Therefore, this attack was destined to be in vain. On the contrary, Han Fei's sealing spear pierced through the golden light body of this creature. At the moment this seal was pierced, Han Fei clearly felt that the golden light crushing on him was weakened by at least 30%. "How is this possible?" the god roared. Han Fei smiled and said, "Senior, I haven't turned into a star yet, but I can also continue to seal you for 10,000 years, 100,000 years, 1,000,000 years. In the past, that person suppressed you with 5 spear lights. I am weak, and 5 seals are definitely not enough. I can use 50, 500, 5,000, 50,000. What do you think?" At this time, Han Fei didn't have the slightest fear and his mouth was full of sarcasm. The creature still wanted to struggle. "How dare you?" Han Fei continued to stretch out his hand to condense the spear light, while branding the Tao patterns of heaven and earth. He responded with a smile, "From the moment I understood this sealing technique, I knew it. The person who cast this technique just casually cast it. Just like I am now, I can borrow the Tao patterns of heaven and earth at will. Therefore, the person who sealed you doesn't see you as an opponent at all. This can only mean that for him, you are very weak." Then Han Fei continued, "You know that most of these people can't break this seal, but you still don't dare to let these people outside go. You're afraid that they will find an emperor-level master, right? So you are afraid of an emperor-level master. That is to say, your strength is not enough for you to keep an emperor-level master. You don't even dare to bet against an ordinary emperor-level master." In the end, Han Fei suddenly stood up. "So, no matter what your real strength is, you are really weak now." When he said this, Han Fei was very sure. Of course, although he guessed that now might be the weakest time of the god, he was also a master who could forcibly detain many heaven-opening state masters. If he wanted to have the qualification to negotiate with him, he must create a better condition for himself, and this condition was to seal him. Only when the strength of this god was greatly reduced could he have hope. So the second spear light pierced down without hesitation. Han Fei said, "Senior God, I just casually created this spear light. Maybe you can break it in a few days, but at least I have seized the opportunity. If I want to, you will be completely sealed. Now you only have the possibility of breaking the seal if you listen to me." Chapter 2275. Originally, although Han Fei had a lot of confidence, he was afraid. He was afraid that he would be suppressed by this god. However, he had the capital to back it up. His capital was openly admitting that he could break the seal of this place. This guy had been suppressed here for a long time. He must want to go out. Otherwise, he wouldn't have detained so many people. Since he wanted to go out and he could break the seal, even if he offended him, he had no reason to kill him. As long as he didn't kill him, he would have a chance to summon eldest senior brother. In any case, he won this bet. Although Han Fei didn't use the 9-palace destiny ruler to measure his luck, he knew that the crisis was over. Now, what Han Fei cared about most was how many resources this god could give him. He only dug out 3 treasures on the periphery of the god's ruin, but he was almost killed. It could be seen that danger and opportunity coexisted. Even if he was given another chance to dig, he wouldn't let his main body dig again. Otherwise, once the movement was too big and he provoked a late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse, he would really die. But this god must be very rich. Compared with massive resources and treasures, Han Fei didn't care so much now. What he lacked the most now was resources. As the Origin Sea was opened up, the more resources he would be lacking. Even if Han Fei knew that his plundering ability was very strong, it would take a long time for him to open up another 50,000 kilometers of the Origin Sea. Even if he killed 2 more late-stage celestial transformation powerhouses, it wouldn't be enough for him to open up 50,000 kilometers of the Origin Sea. So, how could Han Fei let go of such an opportunity? The god spirit watched as the second seal continued to press down, causing the entire space to tremble slightly. He had finally broken some seals. How could he let a junior seal him again? The god said, "Human, stop. Let's talk this out." "Ha ha." Han Fei grinned. "Senior, I'm also very reasonable. Senior, give me another 500,000 kilometers of resources, and I can save you." "How can I believe you?" "As a sign of sincerity, I can help Senior break the seals of the 2 original spear pillars first, and then replace them with the seals I set up. My seal isn't strong enough. It's not strong enough, so once we complete our transaction, Senior will be able to break the seal in a few days or even a few months." Han Fei was not stupid. Without the seal, how could he resist this guy who claimed to be a god? After a while, the god replied, "I don't have that many resources. With the size of your Origin Sea now, you probably don't need 500,000 kilometers of resources. At most, I can increase your Origin Sea by another 90,000 miles." Han Fei didn't believe it and said, "Senior, I'm not well educated. Don't lie to me. Senior, you're a dignified god, yet you're telling me that you only have these few resources?" At this moment, this god might have regretted calling himself a god for the first time. At this moment, he could only brace himself and say, "I'm trapped here, how can I get resources?" Moreover, this 90,000 is equivalent to 260,000 kilometers of your normal Origin Sea. This is already an extremely ridiculous amount of resources. Han Fei shook his head. "It's none of my business. If there are no resources, we'll have to exchange them with something else. For example, God's Crystal, Heavenly Jade Essence, Mystic Yellow Soil, Chaotic Spiritual Soil, Primordial Spiritual Soil, Ultra-Quality Divine Weapons, the Flesh and Blood of Gods. These things." Han Fei immediately added, "Senior, don't tell me you don't have any." There are a lot of good things buried in the periphery of this place. I've dug them out. This god couldn't move now. Otherwise, he would have jumped up and slapped Han Fei through the face. Do you really think I'm AF * King God? Primordial spiritual soil? Flesh and blood of gods? Why don't you go to heaven? However, at this moment, Han Fei had the initiative. How dare he really challenge him? He said leisurely, I can give you 5 pieces of heavenly jade essence, 11 pieces of God's crystal, and as much mystic yellow soil as a mountain. I don't have anything else. I do have a fragment of a chaotic treasure, but it needs to be reforged by a peak-level divine weapon forger to have any hope of returning it to a chaotic treasure. Shoot, Han Fei looked indifferent, but his heart was in turmoil. It was the first time that he had heard that mystic yellow soil could be calculated according to the size of a mountain. 5 pieces of heavenly jade essence? What AF * King Tycoon? And the god's crystal, its quality is probably not inferior to the heavenly jade essence. Also, what is a chaotic treasure? What is a divine weapon forger? This was the first time he had heard it. Forget it. I can't show my uncultured side. Anyway, it's at least a divine-level weapon. It just so happens that my gourd has a hole and has become a fragment. I wonder if this can be used to make up for it. But how could Han Fei let this guy go so easily? He pondered for a moment and said, I'm a little tempted by what you said, but these resources are not enough to turn me into a star. So, this is not enough. Senior, do you really think I will believe what you said? That's all you have, right? With that said, Han Fei took out the navigator and drew 2 words in the void, which were true and false respectively. Han Fei's voice was leisurely. Is he telling the truth or a lie? However, the next moment, Han Fei frowned slightly. The navigator failed? Then, he heard the god say, Your nautical instrument is not bad, but its limit is the heaven-opening realm. It's useless for you to use it on me. Han Fei was shocked. It seemed that both the navigator and the 9-palace ruler of Providence had their limits. They were both at the level of human holy weapons. In fact, in theory, they were only at the same level as the sea-quelling bizarre treasures. But because of their uniqueness, they were probably comparable to divine weapons. However, this thing couldn't be used on venerable emperors, which meant that it had its limit. Han Fei shrugged. Anyway, I don't believe it. With my strength and resources, I can get them with a little time. But senior, your seal can't be unlocked with a little time. Han Fei didn't care. Anyway, he was just bluffing the god. If this was really the god's limit, he wouldn't force it. In any case, after this wave, he still had another wave to deal with. The god was silent for a while and then said, I can promise you an ultra-quality divine weapon, but I will not give it to you until you completely break the seal. Han Fei couldn't help but smile. Deal. As soon as he heard the words, ultra-quality divine weapon, Han Fei was satisfied. An ultra-quality divine weapon was enough for the 3 masters of the heavenly clan to hunt him down in person. Although he was weak, it was enough to prove the power of an ultra-quality divine weapon. And, to be honest, even if this god really gave him so many resources, he might not be able to digest them all in a short time. Besides, he couldn't really take all the resources from one person. The road of cultivation must be full of twists and turns. If the deal was really successful this time, his harvest in the god's ruin could be described as extremely rich, probably more than 1,000 years of cultivation. After the deal was reached, Han Fei said, Senior, how about you give me a few people as well? The 3 guys who came with me are all clones of the masters. How about you help me kill them, Senior? Also, I have a blood-killing puppet. Senior, you should know it. Han Fei knew that even if he absorbed all the resources now, he might not be able to kill these 3 clones. Moreover, if he wanted a whetstone, it could be found everywhere in the wilderness. Wasn't it better to use the sea monster fortress to whet the knife? Why did he want to use these old bastards of the heavenly clan to whet the knife? The god said, I'm sealed and can't fight. Because my bloodline is connected to the veins of the earth here, I can control the will of the Great Way in this area. But those 3 people have reached the late stage of the star transformation realm. Although I can kill them with the will of the Great Way, I will definitely kill everyone in the area. As for your blood-killing puppet, it is trapped in another place. After I unseal it, it will appear. Han Fei said, In that case, please give them space to fight, Senior. The outside world. It had been more than a year. Many people had paid a lot of resources in order to fight for 10 years of life. Although they weren't sure if Han Fei would save them, they felt that Han Fei had to save himself, right? Since he wanted to save himself, why didn't he save them? In the worst case, he could give all his belongings to Han Fei. Anyway, as long as he could get out of here alive, he could get resources. Therefore, not a single person died in this 1 year. At the moment when the 2 spear pillars appeared, Han Fei was no longer shrouded in golden light. He stood on the top of the spear pillar, looked down at the emperors, and said, Everything went smoother than I expected. It may not take 10 years to break the array. Maybe it will only take a few days. Wow, fellow cultivator, are you serious? Fellow cultivator, if you can break the seal this time, we will give you everything we have. There were also some who felt their lives tighten. Would this god let them go? Could this seal really be broken? Someone shouted, Fellow cultivator, have you negotiated with Master God? Han Fei knew what they were worried about, so he said, Don't worry, since I can break the seal, I can guarantee everyone's safety. Of course, before that, I have a matter that I would like to ask seniors for help with. Fellow cultivator, please tell me. I'm willing to go through a mountain of swords and a sea of fire. Fellow cultivator, just say it. We will do our best to help you. Don't worry, fellow cultivator. No matter what, I will help you with this matter. In an instant, everyone stood up. Only the 3 experts of the Tian clan had ugly expressions on their faces. Han Fei inadvertently glanced at the 3 experts of the Tian clan, only to hear him say, Me? I saved everyone. I hope that everyone can promise me one condition. In your lifetime, you must kill a heaven-opening realm expert of the Tian clan, no matter who. At that moment, the expressions of the 3 elders of the Tian clan suddenly changed. What a ruthless kid. There were nearly 200 heaven-opening realm experts here, and many of them were late-stage star transformation realm experts. With such a large group of people targeting the Tian clan, the consequences could be imagined? How big of a deal do I think it is? Fellow cultivator, as long as I meet those arrogant fellows of the Tian clan, I will definitely kill as many as I can. Fellow cultivator, don't worry, this will be the only big thing after I leave this place. Immediately, someone's heart skipped a beat. He pointed at the clones of the 3 elders of the Tian clan and said, Fellow cultivator, these 3 are your enemies, right? Are they from the Tian clan? For a moment, everyone's eyes were on the 3 of them. The elder leading the Tian clan coldly snorted, I can't make a move here, what can you do to me? A bunch of clowns think they are worthy of touching my Tian clan. They are simply overestimating themselves. Hey, you're crazy enough. I can't touch you now, but when the seal is broken, can you still escape? It was at this moment that Han Fei suddenly said, I forgot to tell everyone. Now you can attack at any time. Senior God has already agreed to not devour your power. The 3 elders of the Tian clan. Chapter 2276. When Han Fei said that this place was no longer devouring energy, everyone immediately sensed it and then exclaimed. Someone was ecstatic. Ha! The vitality is no longer flowing away. Someone went crazy. Good. The resources in the Origin Sea are about to dry up. Someone cupped his fists and said, Thank you, fellow Taoist and Lord Deity. May I know your name? Yes. Fellow cultivator, you have done us a great favor. How can we not know your name? Han Fei didn't hide it and said generously, My name is Han Fei. Someone laughed and said, "Fellow cultivator Han Fei, wait a moment. We will cut off the heads of these 3 people now." Someone echoed, "Kill them. Damn heavenly race, how dare they be enemies with fellow cultivator Han Fei? They really don't know what death is." Someone unleashed the power of a late-stage star transformation cultivator and took the lead to attack. "How dare you be so arrogant with just 3 clones? You really don't know what death means." At that moment, in the valley, there were more than 200 heavenly opening state powerhouses, and none of them were mediocre. And with several late-stage star transformation cultivators taking the lead, the 3 people from the heavenly race were instantly overwhelmed by their power. Hundreds of mountains around them were flattened, and the scene was a mess. During this period, Han Fei saw the strength of the 3 powerhouses of the heavenly race. It could be said that they could shatter the sky and crack the earth with a flip of their hand. Their speed was extremely fast. However, even though they were so strong, under the bombardment of more than 200 powerhouses, their energy was rapidly consumed. How could mere clones resist this group of ruthless people who were used to fighting in the wilderness? Therefore, the 3 of them only lasted for 100 minutes before they were shattered by the emperors. There was no room for resistance at all. Someone held a thunder hammer and blasted out tens of thousands of lightning bolts. Someone released a strange poison that even corroded the void, leaving holes everywhere. Someone burst out a spear light, which actually contained 30% of the god sealing spear's aura. Seeing this scene, Han Fei sighed in his heart. Sometimes, the more people there were, the more power there was. They were all at the heavenly opening state. Even a group of tormented spirits could kill a powerhouse like in Taiping, let alone a group of emperors who had fought in the wilderness. Han Fei was very satisfied. He cupped his hands at the emperors and said, "Thank you for your help. Please wait for a few months for me to break the seal." "Haha, it's just a trivial matter. How can we delay fellow Taoist Han Fei from breaking the seal? Just break it, don't worry about us." At the same time, the 3 clones crumbled. On a large ship outside the god's ruin, the experts of the 3 heavenly races suddenly opened their eyes. Almost at the same time, they felt as if something was missing in their hearts. All these years, they had been waiting here for their clones to return. However, at this moment, their hopes were shattered. Their doppelgangers, which carried nearly 40% of their power, had actually fallen in the god's ruins. This was something they could not accept. The leader said, "Let's go. If this place can destroy our clones, then it can also destroy us. Since our avatars have perished, I reckon that Brat has perished as well. Now, it seems like there must be a great secret here, and we must ask the Emperor Venerable Masters of our clan to come here." As it spoke, the ship turned around and leapt into the void. The deal between Han Fei and the gods was quite careful. The main reason was that this god was too cautious. Every time Han Fei broke a spear column, he would give Han Fei 20% of the promised resources and various treasures. Han Fei prepared for more than half a month. Suddenly, he rose into the sky and forged one spear column after another with the high-level refining materials in the mountain and part of his origin sea. At that moment, everyone looked up at the sky. They felt the sharp Taoist rhyme in the spear column. Then they saw the void tremble, and strange marks appeared all over the sky. When those marks were imprinted on the spear column, a god-sealing spear appeared. When 36 god-sealing spears appeared in the sky, Han Fei used the 36 spears to form a sealing formation. Based on the god-sealing spear, he formed a spear array. Dong, dong, dong. When all the spear array enveloped him, the brilliant golden light dimmed, and the range shrank by more than 10 times. The emperors witnessed this scene with their own eyes, and their hearts were filled with excitement. Someone was shocked. Fellow Taoist Han Fei is very talented. In just 6 years, not only did he comprehend this spear art, but he can also use the Taoist patterns at will. Peerless heavenly talent. He's really a peerless heavenly talent. Although there are Taoist patterns in the world, who can easily use them, I didn't expect that fellow Taoist Han Fei could use them so easily. Wow! He can challenge the heavenly races and escape from the clones of the 3 heavenly races. How can he be mediocre? For a moment they saw the hope of going out. In the sky, Han Fei didn't stop. He pressed his palm on the god's sealing spear that was set up by the strong masters in the past. On the spear column, the Taoist patterns disappeared one by one and finally all disappeared. When the dense Taoist patterns dissipated by more than half, cracks appeared on the spear column. This scene made the emperors hold their breath. They had been prepared to die, but they didn't expect that they would miraculously survive. Sometimes, when luck comes, it's really unstoppable. When the first spear column collapsed, the golden light that had shrunk by more than 10 times expanded again by 4 or 5 times. Phew! Han Fei took a breath, jumped to another spear column, and said, "Senior, it's time to give me the second share of resources." 1 month later, when the third spear column collapsed, everyone clearly felt that the world here was different. They had a hunch that they could go out. At this moment, in addition to the 2 spear columns on the golden light, Han Fei temporarily sealed this so-called god with 108 spear columns. On this day, Han Fei stood on the 4th spear column, looked at the more than 200 strong masters, and said, "Everyone, there are 2 more spear columns, and this seal will be broken. Now that you can leave this place, you'd better leave quickly. It's best to leave this god's ruin within half a month, and don't set foot here easily again." How could these heaven-opening state powerhouses not understand what Han Fei meant? From the moment they saw him reconstruct the seal but remove the original seal, they knew that Han Fei didn't trust this so-called god. He knew that Han Fei did not trust this so-called god, but his strength was not enough to seal this god-level powerhouse with a single spear. Therefore, every time Han Fei wanted to remove a spear column, he had to set up 36 spear column seals to replace the original one. Now, there were only 2 spear columns sealed, so Han Fei became more and more careful. If the remaining seals couldn't seal this god, the consequences would be unbearable. At this moment, no one refused. No one wanted to bet on this last probability. Besides, they wouldn't get any benefits even if they didn't bet. If they won, they would live, but if they lost, they would lose their lives. And they could leave now, so why bother? Immediately, someone cupped his fist. "Fellow Taoist Han Fei, let's have a drink and chat when we meet again. I'm determined to make friends with you. Today I can't help you, so I'm leaving first." Someone echoed, "Fellow Taoist Han Fei, if I leave today, I will be the enemy of the heavenly clan. I will kill as many as I can, not just one of them." Someone looked grateful. "Fellow Taoist Han Fei, I'm Luwan. I can't repay you, but all my resources are here. Please accept them, Brother Han." Although Han Fei only asked them to help kill one heaven-opening state powerhouse of the heavenly clan, they would definitely choose those they could kill. However, they would definitely choose those that they could kill, and those that they couldn't, they wouldn't seek their own death. After reaching the heavenly opening state, in order to not feel guilty in the future, all their resources were nothing. Lu Xiong is right. "Brother Han, I have all my resources, please take them." Brother Han, in an instant, a large pile of resources was sent to Han Fei. As the saying went, there were many righteous people in the wilderness. Although these people were not necessarily good people, they had reached the heavenly opening state. But for them to be able to reach split the heavens, they had to have something in their hearts. No matter how much they valued resources, they could give them up now. Han Fei cupped his fist. "In that case, thank you, everyone. The sea is wide and the water is long. Please take care." When all these people left, the god moaned, "Human, do you think I will hurt them?" Han Fei smiled and said, "I don't know." The god's voice was indifferent. "There are no friends on the path of cultivation. These people are just impulsive. If you are really caught by the heavenly clan, they will definitely hand you over." Han Fei laughed. "So be it. I will definitely trample the heavenly clan under my feet one day." I am afraid that they don't know me. Han Fei didn't hide his clones. Neza's clone and Zhang Daqian's clone all had their own purposes. However, on this trip to the Divine Capital Dynasty, if there were no accidents, Han Fei's name would definitely appear. Another month passed. When Han Fei stood on the last wall pillar, a small world flew in front of him. When Han Fei stuffed this small world into the Origin Sea, there was a black-yellow mountain in it. Good heavens! When Han Fei saw the black-yellow mountain, the god said, "This black-yellow mountain is enough to strengthen your Origin Sea. It is also a reward for saving me." Han Fei smiled and said, "Senior, don't forget that there is still the last ultra-quality divine weapon." The god's voice was leisurely. "In fact, the 4 seals have been broken. You should know that they can no longer trap me." Han Fei smiled and said, "I know. But I can trap you for a while. If you don't give it to me, I will find a venerable emperor during this period." "Senior, do you really think that a heavenly talent like me is wild?" The god didn't speak but said, "If you break the last seal, I will give it to you." Han Fei shook his head. "If I break the last seal, you must give it to me. Otherwise, I am afraid that I can't escape from this god's ruins." "Okay." Han Fei thought for a while and said, "Senior, I have a blood puppet at the late stage of the star transformation realm. It has been a long time. Can you give it back to me?" Maybe because the blood puppet was too far away from him, he didn't notice it. Therefore, before he broke the seal, he had to take the blood puppet away. The void twisted one after another, and a blood puppet jumped out of a mountain inexplicably. Seeing this, Han Fei immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he didn't lose it. This puppet was equivalent to a super master. It was of great significance, no less than an ultra-quality divine weapon. It would be a great loss if he lost it. Chapter 2277. As usual, after Han Fei broke about 1/3 of the patterns on the last spear pillar, he heard a crack, and a faint crack appeared on the spear pillar. At this moment, Han Fei suddenly stopped and said, "Senior, it's time to give him an ultra-quality divine weapon." The god didn't dare to take the risk. With this half a seal, plus Han Fei's seals, he could be suppressed for at least 2 months. Of course, if he was willing to erupt, it might not even take 2 months. But as Han Fei said, he was not sure if Han Fei could call a venerable emperor. From Han Fei's discussion with him about expanding the limit of the Origin Sea, he knew that Han Fei had an expert behind him. This was also the reason why he did not dare to gamble. However, compared to his freedom, a supreme-grade divine artifact was naturally more important. Therefore, after some thought, this so-called god threw out a red bead. The moment this fiery red bead appeared in front of Han Fei, information popped up in his eyes. Name God's Rosary, Introduction. This is a divine thought bead refined from the bitter sea lotus seed, a chaos spiritual treasure, and the blood essence of a god. Wearing this pearl would allow one to have an affinity with the heavenly Tao, and one could unconditionally borrow the energy of the heavenly Tao to temper one's body and soul every day. When activated during a battle, it could increase one's combat strength by 10%. It could protect one's soul from being confused and falling into illusions. The prayer bead was holy and pure, able to block all evil and avoid billions of great poisons. It can slowly increase the wearer's luck. Quality. Ultimate divine artifact, attached spirit. None effect. Using the way of heaven to temper the body, keep the soul clear, repel all evils, resist all poisons, and strengthen one's luck. Recastable, unrefined. Note: do not easily attach a soul to it. Souls that are not compatible with it will not be able to fuse with it. Bastard. When Han Fei saw some of the attributes of the god's prayer beads, he was shocked. It was an assistive divine artifact. This was definitely an assistive divine artifact. On the surface, it didn't seem to have much effect in all aspects. Tempering his body every day meant that he was only slightly tempering his body every day. He could only borrow the power of the heavenly energy to increase his battle prowess by 10%, and the god-murdering gloves could increase his battle prowess by 30%. However, it couldn't stop the effects of the divine prayer beads. In the face of those guys who cultivated Yang's spirit in the Ghost Strait, it was simply a natural enemy. Besides, he was also shocked by the fact that he was immune to all poisons. Did it mean that he didn't need to cultivate his poison resistance? What's more, this thing could even increase one's luck. Luck was a mysterious thing, and generally speaking, it couldn't be stolen. Only in certain circumstances and under certain circumstances could one fight for it. Therefore, in summary, it was not an exaggeration to call this god's thought bead a supreme godly weapon. Buzz! A trace of obsession flashed through Han Fei's eyes, but then he felt the void shake. Han Fei picked up the god prayer beads and stuffed them into the origin sea. In the next moment, he vanished from this world. What a joke! If I don't run now, am I supposed to wait for him to break free from the seal? Swoosh, 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 Han Fei directly soared to 6 times the speed of light. This was mainly because he had experienced the great Tao of space of the Tian clan powerhouse and learned a bit of its essence, which increased his speed to 4 times the speed of light. Coupled with the power of time and his body, he was able to burst forth with 6 times the speed of light. No matter what happened behind him, Han Fei only had one thought in his mind: run. Whether the opponent was a real god or not, he was at least at the level of an emperor. He had tricked him so much. If he didn't run now, would he wait for the opponent to catch up? After running for a long time, Han Fei finally left the god's ruin. At this time, he didn't think of digging any treasures. He swore that he would never come to the god's ruin again. Under the guidance of the nautical panorama, Han Fei ran straight to where Zhou Jingjing and the others were. However, what Han Fei didn't know was that just half a day after he ran, a big crack appeared on the last spear pillar with a crack. The golden light had been completely withdrawn at this moment, and it was the skeleton of a strange fish. The skeleton was crystal clear and transparent, as if gold and jade had completely blended. If Han Fei saw it, he would definitely be shocked. Is this AF** King God? How could it be a god when it had become AF** King Skeleton? It must have been nailed to death for tens of thousands of years. Tutu, below the skeleton, an oval-shaped golden shell rose from the ground. Then, a tortoise head emerged from the soil. This little turtle was shining brilliantly, but a trace of panic flashed in its eyes. All its strength was gathering towards the spear pillar. He murmured, "Hurry, hurry up! Oh no, I don't know if the Emperor Sparrow has found me. This generation of the Emperor Sparrow has been born. I have to go back to the divine beasts as soon as possible." Han Fei, the Emperor Sparrow. Han Fei didn't know that the real god was dead, nor did he know that everything was pretended by the little turtle, nor did he know that the little turtle was actually panicking too. While Han Fei was running for his life, the little turtle was also breaking the seal with all its might. One day later, Han Fei, who was running wildly, suddenly heard the voice of the Emperor Sparrow in his mind. He said, "I don't know why, but I seem to feel the aura of a divine beast. I'm afraid it's not a god that's trapped in the god's ruin." Han Fei said, "A divine beast is not something that I can resist, right? F***ck, he's so far away, but you can still feel him. Don't tell me he's chasing you?" "No, I have to run quickly." Zhou Jingjing had been wandering around the periphery of the god's ruin all these years. However, more than 20 days ago, she started running desperately. For some reason, she met 3 groups of lone wolves in just 5 days, all of whom were at the heaven opening state. 2 of them were at the star transformation state, and the other one was not far from it. She was chased by 2 groups of people. If she hadn't called out the 5 experts of the giant whale fortress, they would have been killed. Even so, all 5 of them were injured. Later, Zhang Daqian told them to run away, no matter where they went, as long as they were away from the god's ruin first. Zhang Daqian naturally knew that his main body was in a desperate situation. Part of the reason he took little Fatty with him was to prepare for emergencies. If he needed to be reborn, little Fatty might be able to help him. But now it seemed that many experts were running away from the god's ruin. Although he didn't know why they were running, it didn't seem to be a good thing. Somewhere deep in the strait, Zhou Jingjing and the others set up a formation that they thought was very powerful, but in fact it was not very powerful. Zhou Jingjing felt that she had run far enough after running for half a month. She needed to maintain her peak strength to face the crisis. Zhang Daqian's clone didn't object to this. In this formation, there were only Zhang Daqian's clone and Zhou Jingjing. Zhou Jingjing said, "Why don't you want to stay in the giant whale fortress? 2 stars together are easy to be discovered." Zhang Daqian's clone said indifferently, "I'm just at the peak of the sea expansion realm. It doesn't matter. Besides, I have a reason to stay outside." Zhou Jingjing wondered, "Are you waiting for your main body?" Zhou Jingjing still didn't know that the one beside her was the real Zhang Daqian. Zhang Daqian's clone said, "Yes. I don't know how long my main body will be gone. Once something happens to my main body, I have to go and take back all the things he left behind." Zhou Jingjing rolled her eyes. "If something happens to him, how strong will his opponent be? You'll take it back? You're just a clone at the peak of the sea expansion realm. Can you take it back?" Zhang Daqian smiled faintly. "Don't look down on sea expansion realm cultivators. There are many sea expansion realm cultivators who can cut open the sky." Zhou Jingjing snorted. Zhang Daqian had disappeared for more than 6 years. During these 6 years there was no news at all. She always felt that he must have run into trouble. Otherwise, with that guy's terrifying strength, how could it take so long for him to escape from the siege of the Crab King city? In fact, in the giant whale fortress, everyone was already dissatisfied, because in the past 6 years, she only dared to let some sea expansion realm cultivators out to train. Most of the time, everyone had to stay in the giant whale fortress. Because the god's ruin was too dangerous, there were countless heaven expansion realm cultivators coming in and out. In the past few years, they had encountered as many as dozens of sea monster fortresses. They were all here to search for treasures. Who dared to train here? Originally, Zhou Jingjing and the other emperors were going to search for treasures, but they were stopped by Zhang Daqian. However, the resources needed for 110,000 people to cultivate could be described as an astronomical figure. Coupled with the large amount of resources that had been supplied before, now that there was a sudden decrease, many people had long been dissatisfied. Suddenly, a spear pierced through the sky. A terrifying spear technique pierced through the seal that Zhou Jingjing and the others had set up. "Ha! You call this a formation? Ridiculous. I'll give you a chance to hand over all your resources. Otherwise, I'll kill you." Zhou Jingjing was shocked. How could they find out? Although the other party said to hand over resources, they definitely wouldn't believe the part that he had handed over. Therefore, the moment he handed over resources, the other party would definitely ask for more. In the wilderness, apart from his own people, Zhou Jingjing had never trusted anyone except Han Fei. Zhou Jingjing's heart thumped, and the giant whale fortress appeared. Swish, swish, swish. 4 heaven expansion realm cultivators walked out of the mouth of the giant whale. The spear-wielding middle-aged man showed a disdainful look. "Oh, so it's a sea monster fortress. Then there must be more resources. The 5 of you are all wounded. You are no match for me. Hand over your resources. Don't force me to fight." Of course, Zhou Jingjing wouldn't give in when resources were involved. Also, among the 5 of them, someone seemed to have observed the stars and speculated. He immediately shouted, "This man's stars are not dazzling. They are just ordinary. He's just putting on a strong front. Jingjing, don't be afraid. We can fight." Zhou Jingjing immediately became spirited and shouted in a low voice, "Go!" Pucci, the moment Zhou Jingjing was about to attack, a spear aura burst out. Before Zhou Jingjing and the others could react, the spear aura directly nailed the guy who had just spoken to the bottom of the sea. The middle-aged man grasped at the void and grabbed another spear aura, which pierced through the void. In that stab, half of the body of the fifth brother of the giant whale fortress was blown up. 2 casual attacks directly stunned Zhou Jingjing and the others. Didn't they say that the stars were not dazzling? Didn't they say that they couldn't? How could they be so strong? Swish, swish, bam, bam, bam. In the blink of an eye, 4 of Zhou Jingjing's 5 brothers were nailed. At this moment, Zhou Jingjing burst out a blade aura and clashed with the spear. This was the momentum of the draw technique that she had integrated into the battle. Huh! The man couldn't help but be surprised and said with a smile, "Interesting. You can actually block one of my spear attacks?" The man condensed another spear, and this time, a Taoist pattern appeared. This stab didn't allow Zhou Jingjing to fight back at all. At that moment, Zhou Jingjing felt that his strength was completely suppressed and he couldn't resist at all. Clang! Just when Zhou Jingjing thought it was over and his giant whale fortress was about to be destroyed, suddenly Zhang Daqian's clone sensed something and immediately shouted, "Fellow cultivator Luwen, wait!" Luwen was shocked and couldn't help but dodge the spear. He looked at Zhang Daqian and couldn't help but frown, thinking, "I don't know him. Besides, this guy is just at the peak of the sea expansion realm. How dare he call me fellow cultivator? Does he want to die?" Luwen narrowed his eyes. "Boy, you've got guts." Zhang Daqian stood with his hands behind his back and smiled faintly. "My name is Han Fei." Chapter 2278. Fellow cultivator Han Fei? Luwen was shocked. How could this person be Han Fei? Luwen was puzzled. After staring at Zhang Daqian's clone for a few seconds, he suddenly turned his head and looked into the distance. However, someone was flying toward them at superluminal speed. After a few seconds, when Han Fei appeared, he couldn't help but tease, "Fellow cultivator Luwen, if I had come one step late, my clone would have been killed by you." Hiss. Luwen looked at Zhang Daqian and then at Han Fei. He was embarrassed and quickly restrained his killing intent. He smiled bitterly and said, "Well, I really didn't know these people were Brother Han's subordinate. I almost killed them by mistake. I'm really ashamed." The moment Han Fei returned, Zhou Jingjing and the other heaven-opening realm experts of the giant whale fortress all heaved a sigh of relief. As long as this person returned, everything would be fine. However, what shocked them was that Han Fei seemed to have experienced a lot in the past few years. A super expert like Luwen actually had such an attitude towards Han Fei. This puzzled them. In their view, Luwen was a powerhouse who had already reached the star transformation realm, and he was not an ordinary star transformation realm powerhouse. With his strength, he could easily take on 5 people at once. Such a powerhouse, even if he could not defeat Han Fei, wasn't his attitude a little too friendly? Han Fei smiled and said, "As the saying goes, the ignorant are not guilty. Hey, fellow cultivator Luwen, didn't you leave a few months ago? Why are you still wandering around outside the god's ruin?" Luwen's expression became awkward. "Brother Han, I'm ashamed to say this. After coming out, we wanted to leave directly, but we used up a lot of energy in the god's ruin. Our strength has not recovered yet, so we naturally wanted to get some resources first. Considering that Brother Han still has a few months to go, most of us only left the god's ruin and hunted nearby. Because there were many experts who came because of your reputation, it was easier for us to hunt. That was why we didn't leave in time." Han Fei immediately understood. He said, "I see. But fellow cultivator Lu, I'm afraid we have to go far away now. If there are no accidents, that person will come out in half a month at most." Hiss. Luwen was shocked. So fast? Luwen's heart shook and he immediately cupped his fists to Han Fei. "Thank you for reminding me, Brother Han. Otherwise, I would have hunted here for a few days. In that case, Brother Han, shall we go together?" Han Fei shook his head slightly and said with a smile, Brother Lu, do you think that person will let me go? Lu Wen shivered and seemed to understand something. It seemed that the relationship between Han Fei and the god was quite strange. They must have some secrets that they didn't know. Now that Han Fei said so, he naturally didn't dare to go with Han Fei. Han Fei didn't care about that. He said, Brother Lu, you seem to have a deep understanding of the spear too. Of course, Lu Wen knew that his avatar must have synchronized the scene just now with his real body. He laughed and said, We've been trapped here for so long, it would be a lie to say that we haven't learned anything. However, our comprehension is definitely much lower than Brother Han's. It's impossible to mold a spear pillar. Han Fei nodded slightly. That was true. The spear pillar was there at that time, and everyone was a heaven-opening realm expert, who couldn't understand it. However, just as Lu Wen said, they couldn't have understood much. Otherwise, so many people wouldn't have died. Han Fei nodded slightly. Fellow cultivator Lu Wen, I have to go first. I have to run for a while in case that person catches up. Lu Wen was also shocked. He cupped his fists at Han Fei and said, Brother Han is so righteous. I wish I could help you. Me. Brother Han, I think if you want to avoid that person, you'd better go to a superforce, the Divine Capital Dynasty, where countless experts of the Divine East Sea gather. The great Dongwu Emperor ruled the Divine Land alone and was the strongest venerable sovereign of the Divine Land of the Eastern Sea. I think that person won't really dare to go to the Divine Capital Dynasty like he said. Great Emperor Dongwu? The strongest emperor of the Divine East Sea? Han Fei's heart moved. If he was called the strongest, he definitely couldn't be weak. Han Fei immediately nodded. Thank you for your advice, Brother Lu. After bidding farewell to Lu Wen, Zhou Jingjing and the others looked at Han Fei strangely. Why didn't we understand the conversation between the two of them? Who is that person you're talking about? Why does it sound like there's a strong expert chasing you? Also, what kind of enemy would go to the Divine Capital Dynasty to seek protection from the great Emperor Dongwu? Seeing the confusion in their eyes, Han Fei waved his hand and the healing divine chain moved back and forth on the bodies of Zhou Jingjing and the others. The injuries of Zhou Jingjing and the others healed rapidly. Zhou Jingjing was the first to recover. He quickly asked, Who was that person just now? Han Fei said, Just a friend. You've been waiting nearby for years. Very good. Zhou Jingjing really wanted to roll his eyes at Han Fei, but he immediately said, Are you going to the Divine Capital Dynasty? Before, Han Fei didn't tell Zhou Jingjing and the others that he was going to the Divine Capital Dynasty to participate in the major competition of 10,000 years. But there was no need to hide it. Now he had to find a place to cultivate in seclusion for a while, and then he had to go to the Divine Capital Dynasty. For a long time in the future, he probably wouldn't go looking for a whetstone to sharpen himself. In fact, after the baptism of thunder and several life and death battles, his foundation had basically been consolidated, and he didn't need to look for people to fight as before. So Han Fei paused and said, In the God's ruins, something unexpected happened. In the future, I won't go hunting some sea monster fortresses anymore. So, in the future, you don't have to be my bait. So, I'll give you another chance. Are you still willing to follow me? If not, I'll give you some resources for your good performance over the years. In the future, we'll go our separate ways. Immediately, the heaven-opening realm experts behind Zhou Jingjing were startled, as they stared at Zhou Jingjing. In fact, they had secretly advised Zhou Jingjing several times. Han Fei was a real god's favored one, not someone that ordinary independent cultivators could compare to. Following Han Fei often led them into dangerous places, and they might get into trouble one day. Although they had to be careful as sea monster fortresses, they were still free and didn't have to be others' followers. Zhou Jingjing couldn't help but think of Lu Wen just now, who fought against 5 people casually. What did this mean? It meant that they were too weak. So what if they were heaven-opening state experts? In the wilderness, there was no shortage of heaven-opening state experts. What was lacking was powerful heaven-opening state experts. As for the sea monster fortress, digging and plundering everywhere, would it really make people as powerful as they were just now? It seemed that they were following a normal template. As long as they cultivated hard, their strength would gradually become stronger. But people like Han Fei took an extreme path. Although it was dangerous, the upper limit of their growth was too high, and they had many adventures. For example, in the years when he was Han Fei's bait, his strength increased explosively. After taking a deep breath, Zhou Jingjing suddenly raised his head. "If we are willing to follow you, what will you do to us?" Han Fei casually glanced at the people behind Zhou Jingjing and then at Zhou Jingjing. "You're about to turn into a star, right?" Zhou Jingjing said, "In fact, I have already started to turn into a star. The 360,000 kilometers of the origin sea have begun to turn into a star. Now the process has been going on for a while and 1/5 of it has been completed." Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. He didn't expect this because he hadn't asked about it. Han Fei asked, "Why are you still so weak when you're about to turn into a star?" Zhou Jingjing. The emperors, Zhou Jingjing and the others were speechless. Weak? Han Fei couldn't help but ponder. That's not bad. Lu Wen had turned into a star for a long time. He had traveled a long way after turning into a star and had many adventures. It seemed reasonable for him to fight against 5 people alone. However, you're still too weak. If you follow me, I can teach you some great techniques, which can make your strength improve by leaps and bounds. However, if you follow me, your life is mine. What I'm going to do in the future is very dangerous, and you may die at any time. Are you still willing to follow me? Han Fei's heart did a flip. Being a star transformation powerhouse was actually not weak, so he shouldn't despise them. If he wanted to overthrow the Scavenger City, he needed some help. After all, Scavenger City wasn't his only enemy. Primordial City was also his enemy. Those were just the enemies on the chaotic wasteland, and he would definitely go to the heavenly clan of the divine land of the East Ocean in the future. The little vine of the demon purification pot must be obtained by him. In this way, he had too many enemies, and the basic combat power he needed must be at least at the heaven-opening realm, right? It might not be a bad thing to slowly collect them from now on. Besides, Zhou Jingjing and the others were not the key. The population in the sea monster fortress was also one of the potential stock. If these people grew up, they would also be a force to be reckoned with. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. It was a pity that he couldn't wander in the wilderness all the time. Otherwise, he could try to build a mobile castle. Zhou Jingjing's heart skipped a beat when she heard that Han Fei could teach them technique. She believed what Han Fei said. She had only watched the battle for a few years and her strength had improved by leaps and bounds. If Han Fei taught them techniques personally, it was foreseeable that their strength would grow rapidly. Zhou Jingjing looked back at the others. Some of the others shook their heads slightly, and some were lost in thought. Zhou Jingjing seemed to know what they were thinking, so she said, "Then what about the more than 100,000 people in my giant whale fortress?" Han Fei said, "I won't take you to the Divine Capital Dynasty. The 10,000-year competition of the Divine Capital Dynasty is around the corner. Strong people from all walks of life will gather there, and it will be extremely dangerous. It doesn't make sense to take you there. If you are willing to follow me, you can wait for me outside the chaotic wasteland. Don't rush to answer me. If I don't find you within 100 years, you can leave on your own." Zhou Jingjing was overjoyed when she heard this. She really didn't dare to go to the Divine Capital Dynasty. But if it was a remote place near the chaotic wasteland, why wouldn't she dare? However, Zhou Jingjing was thinking, the wilderness is so vast, isn't Han Fei afraid that they will run away? But when she remembered the navigator that Han Fei once showed, she immediately understood. Yes, with that kind of treasure, how could he worry about them running away? So Zhou Jingjing took a deep breath. I am willing to follow you,